Pirro. And that seemed to work because they referred to the first game at Elland Road. It was paused. And then they said, now, while we displayed a message on our big screen at Elland Road to explain why the game had been paused, it wasn't visible for approximately 25% of the stadium, including the South Stand. In our preceding fixture with Manchester City at the Etihad in November 2025, the game was controversially stopped in the second half for a tactical timeout. During an injury break, with the squads congregating on the touchline, fans may have thought that this was happening again.
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan Van range, helping business owners to work better and live better. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van Centre.
With your headlines at just coming up to 2 minutes past 10, I'm Nick Ellaby. Good morning. Keith Andrews despises this culture of slamming players who miss penalties.
I think the ones and talking about, national heroes that have done it, ridiculed, persecuted. I think it's disgusting. It takes serious courage to do that. He practices that technique a lot, goes in, everyone's raving about him.
The Brentford head coach says Dango Ouattara is fine after chipping the ball straight into Areola's hands. That allowed West Ham to make the FA Cup quarter-finals.
If I'm his teammate, I'm saying, what are you doing?
All the other pens were good. Some of West Ham's pens, top corner.
West Ham play Leeds in the last 8. Nuno Espirito Santos told us their cup run will help the whole squad as they push for Premier League survival. Meanwhile, former Tottenham defender Sebastian Bassong's told us Harry Redknapp could be very helpful to Spurs in the short term.
The way he used to manage us, it was really man management. He used to put a lot of responsibility onto us because he had these skills to pick up good players and good men in order to play amongst each other.
Struggling at home, Spurs go to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, live on talkSPORT tonight. Igor Tudor admits Premier League survival is the priority. Australia have offered asylum to the rest of Iran women's football team after 5 players claimed asylum. There are fears for their safety if they return home. The squad were called wartime traitors in Iran for not singing the national anthem before a game. And this year's boat race will be live with our colleagues over on Times Radio. They've secured a 3-year deal to cover Oxford versus Cambridge, one of the oldest events in sport. It's on Easter Saturday this year. Just download the talkSPORT app to swipe between our stations.
talkSPORT News.
Oil prices are going down after Trump said the war may nearly be over, and MPs reject a complete ban on social media for teenagers. More from the news team in half an hour.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. With expert technicians in all our centres across the country, we'll keep your car's inbuilt safety tech in top condition this winter. Book today at quickfit.com.
Cloudy for most of us, patchy rain in the west, getting windier later before some brighter spells this afternoon. More rain arriving in the west this evening.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live on talkSPORT. So West Ham beat Brentford to reach the FA Cup quarter-finals. Is this Hammer's momentum train showing no signs of stopping? Meanwhile, 48 hours on, radio silence from the old firm. After such damaging scenes, why would Rangers and Celtic leave a vacuum? Also today, has Rodri got away with one? How do you sum up a century of slot? Can FIFA maintain fairness in war? Is the period of friendship over for boxing? Does a Spurs relegation alter the Levy legacy? And will Newcastle upset the odds with Barca in town? Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live in talkSPORT.
100% engagement.
Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
Before I go any further, Nick, good morning. Met you about 7:30 this morning. I was walking around to the news building. Big boxing fan, Simon, as many are out there. Yep. And loves what you do in Top Boxing with Spencer. And in particular, the boxing are on Thursday.
Paul Smith. Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
very good.
Paul's good, isn't he?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I like him.
He fills the gap that Spencer leaves regularly, which is called knowledge.
A lot to get through this morning. On West Ham, through last night, but a bit of concerning news maybe about Crescencio Somerville having a scan today. So they need all the top players in the squad available at this particular time, Simon. And maybe he's not going to be available. Alex Crook will join us later on this morning to put us right on that. And to put us right on this, Mike Ashley's bid for Sheffield Wednesday, as we understand it, rejected. So does that come as any surprise, Simon? And would you expect Ashley, without closely second guessing it, to go back in?
I think Mike will buy a football club the way precisely that Mike wants to buy it. And I think that's exactly the right way to do it. I mean, he's a sort of merchant. There's a few people who do the business that way, and I think it's the right way, which is I put a fiver, metaphorically, I put a fiver on the table, call me if you need me, rather than let me get into a bidding. Well, look how the last one worked out. You got into a bidding war. You got the administrator being able to court different people suggesting they'll all pay different prices. They got an absurd bid for 50 million quid, which couldn't be completed. Now, of course, they had the wonderful opportunity of taking 10% deposit out of it, which gave them a funding mechanism. But Mike Ashley will do it the way he wants to do it. And that's exactly how a purchaser should do it. They shouldn't be hurried along or cajoled or beaten into a corner or put into a Dutch auction or put in an auction where they're bidding against themselves.
I get that, but is he not becoming the modern day tire kicker?
Not at all.
Is he not? He's almost around, but then, well, he's constantly linked with takeovers of certain clubs, and then it doesn't happen.
Well, a tire kicker is someone that has no intention of doing it. That's a completely different dynamic. He has every intention of doing it on his own terms.
Right.
And that's exactly how we should do it. That's exactly how a football club should be bought. That's exactly how a business should be bought, especially a distressed asset that's got a whole raft of problems, that have got a whole raft of challenges that are in need. Now, if the administrator is in the wonderful position to be able to reject bids, now that may well be because Mike's position is, I want the administration to do something he doesn't think he can do. It might be because Mike Ashley has taken up the cudgel that I've been swinging for some time, which is, how about you lot stop being so bloody stupid and demanding that the previous owner gets paid 25p in the pound for the car crash that he's created. By all means, pay the trade creditors 25p in the pound, the poor businesses that put goods in there that are unsecured creditors and should get paid. But not the fella that created the car crash. That's a ridiculous, absurd rule, built out of bad thinking and small-minded people that go, well, why should they get a head start? Well, they're not getting a head start. They're in administration. They've lost everything. They've got nothing left. They've got no playing squad. They're going to have to spend a load of money to rebuild themselves to any kind of level, so they're not going to get any advantage over you guys. So probably what Mike has done is gone, I want you guys to push the EFL and to tell the EFL, this is not a rule, it's guidance.
Okay.
The EFL, you can do something different. You can do something different, or whether it's the IFR, the Independent Financial Regulators, got involved. But to classify Ashley as a tire kicker is just a narrative that's seeded based upon the fact that people index him. This idea that if you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. If you do read them, you're misinformed. It's about being first rather than right. They index Mike Ashley to certain things, not necessarily because Mike indexes himself to it, because they might do. But the fact is, if he wants to do a deal, he can do it, but he'll say very clearly, this is what I will do, and I won't do any more than that. And there's something to be said for that way of doing business, because you know exactly where you stand.
Yeah.
As opposed to this other clown college, these crypto clowns that walked in there, spent £4 million of somebody else's money, I suspect, to come out the door having consumed 3 or 4 months of the administrator's time.
But Chancery has made it known that everybody should know exactly where he stands.
Yeah. Out of the door.
And it's not going to be that simple if you want to just come in, take over the club and move on.
Yeah,
no, he wants something.
Well, that's up to Chancery to find his way through that. That's not Mike Ashley's problem.
No.
Chancery is out the door. He has no control, no jurisdiction whatsoever. He's not a secured creditor. The only thing that's holding Chancery's pants up in this situation is the ruling or the guidance that the EFL put in place. And if the EFL and the administrator grow a pair and turn around to Chancery and his little sidekick Nick DeMarco and say, pack it in, you're not getting anything, Let's see how it plays out. They won't, because it's hard yards, and they won't because they'll be aided and betted by the small-minded people in League One and League Two. They go, well, hang on a second, we're going to be disadvantaged if this club come down. They don't get a 15-point penalty because they didn't pay their debts.
Anyway,
irrespective of the fact that the club will be in absolute chaos, have no playing squad, have no investment in it for years and years, and will be in a decaying state anyway. None of that will be factored into it.
Yeah.
And the football world will go, we'd rather pay this idiot over here that made an absolute car crash of this great football club. We'd rather have you pay him 15, 20 million quid than invest it in the football club, which is the asset that goes forward.
Yeah, I tell you
Makes
what,
some sense.
I just want it known for the listeners
Anyway.
who's watching on YouTube. This is the first time I actually speak to Simon. Like 10 o'clock on the dot, in he comes. You're like a whirling dervish. I'm exhausted already, and it's 11 minutes past 10. Simon, so much to get through this morning. We will get back to the Mike Ashley situation, but as it stands, his bid for Sheffield Wednesday rejected. Alex Crook will have more, but you heard from Simon there, and we'll hear from Alex Crook later on this morning. Simon, West Ham beat Brentford on penalties. Through they go in the FA Cup. Leeds for them next. Is the Hammers momentum train showing no signs of stopping? I mean, it's a different competition, yes, but does it send another signal of intent to their relegation rivals Forest and Spurs? Hey, you lot, we're alive and well, and we're cooking at the moment.
Well, if they cook some gas against Man City and Aston Villa, then they're can send a message to their relegation rivals. Tottenham and Nottingham Forest are still in control of their own destiny. They can't be really worried about what West Ham are doing. And if they are, then they're not taking care of their own business. Nothing that West Ham can do is going to make any difference to Tottenham and Nottingham Forest if they do their jobs. So there's nothing that they need to worry about with West Ham, because they can't affect what's happening with West Ham. Fantastic for West Ham. They've got a good result. They've had great results recently. And some of those results that they've been able to get in there, they've gotten beaten by Liverpool recently.
Yeah.
They got beaten by Chelsea when they were 2-0 up. And so they've had results against the top sides that are adverse. But the sides around them, the Sunderland result, the Bournemouth draw, the Man United draws, they're good results. They're good outcomes for them, but they've still got a lot of yards to cover, and it's still in the other team's hands. And if they come out of these next two games against Man City and against who else are they playing? They've got two big games, Aston Villa. If they come out of those two games with Villa recovering their poise, then the other teams pick up 3 points, we'll be singing a different song then.
But for a club like West Ham, I mean, is there any value in doing a Wigan? Wigan won the FA Cup, but went down.
No, of course not. But if that's the only option on the table, you take it, won't you?
Sure.
Because it gives you some credence and some credibility.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we were saying a month ago, your little mate, what's his name, Barry Silkman, turning around telling you that there's no way that Dave should be keeping, what's his face, Nuno Espirito Santo. And here we are with Nuno Espirito Santo breathing life into what looked like a decaying corpse.
Yeah.
And they're right in it and giving themselves a real chance that nobody thought they would be given.
It was Barry Silkman I was talking to, not Max Bygraves, incidentally. Dango Quattara missed a decisive penalty kick for Brentford, opting for a Panenka. Would you be furious for him opting for a Panenka?
Would I be furious as the owner? No, because I would devolve that fury to the manager, because they're his charges.
Yeah.
Depends if I built my future on what I felt that Brentford were achieving in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Nice opportunity. Look at the composition of the quarterfinals. The big clubs are in it, so probably Brentford were going to come a cropper anyway. I'd be quite happy to look at the team's performance, look at the individuals' performances over the course of his time, and say, well, that's one of those, isn't it?
Well, it is, and that's exactly what Keith Andrews is saying. Have a listen.
No, I'm not annoyed at all. I think the easiest thing for a footballer to do is not take a penalty. I think it takes unbelievable courage on a stage like that to take a penalty. I despise the culture around players that have missed penalty kicks. And I think you know the ones I'm talking about, you know, national heroes that have done it, ridiculed, persecuted. I think it's disgusting. It takes serious courage to do that. He practices that technique a lot, goes in, everyone's raving about him. So Dango will get the absolute support he needs from myself and everybody attached to it.
Last game of the season to stay in the Premier League and see if he said it then.
But do you not respect that? I like that from Keith Andrews. It's good man management, isn't it?
Yeah, it's man management. What it is I've got them on side. I'm not going to take them offside. No benefit in that. I'm not going to go after them or an individual for a decision that was about himself, rather than necessarily the team. If he felt that, I don't know if that's his stock in trade taking those penalties. If that's where he takes penalties, if he does, then I'll roll it back. But Keith is taking a position which is a sensible one. I have turned water into wine with these players. I've defied the conventional logic. I've proved the owner right. I've got everything going the right way. I've got a 6-year contract. Why would I go to war with a player about this? But if it was a game where Brentford were trying to stay in something really meaningful, like the Premier League, I would hasten to add there might be a different view from the manager.
Maybe a different tone. The upshot is West Ham United play Leeds United, Man City play Liverpool, Chelsea, Port Vale, oh yes, and Southampton up against Arsenal. A lot to get through this morning, and bear with me on this. I really do mean a lot to get through. It's 10:15. We're alive and well on talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
It's not just an embarrassment for the old firm, it's an embarrassment for the whole of Scottish football. And Scottish football as a whole is getting tarnished with this. And I just think it's incredibly unfair on the normal, well-behaved football supporter that they're getting tarnished with this brush. And I was listening to David Tanner. It's not just that yesterday. This has been going on for a long, long time. And Rangers as a football club need to address their own house. They need to put a stop to this. I know the way of stopping it is by banning them. Get them gone for the stadium. Nobody wants them.
Yeah, it's with the mask on as well, isn't it? All the covering their faces up as well, Gregor.
How's that anything to do with football? I go to a football match. I like to wear my colours. These people are not football supporters. They're mindless thugs. They're mindless thugs.
Yeah.
Gregor, I've always said, look, I'm a Glasgow boy. I've always said that, the history and all that. There's nothing, for me, there's nothing wrong with being excited before the game, singing your songs for 90 minutes, and then going home and being normal again. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to run on pitches, throw a few punches, and that's just beyond a joke. It's a disgrace.
That's the way it used to happen. For many years, Rangers, there was trouble. Of course there was. It's part of the terrorism, but not like this. And that's, as I said, it's a minority of people that's...
Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning. Jim White, Simon Jordan. We're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. This is Tuesday, March the 10th. Big day, of course. Big day of Champions League football. Galatasaray, Liverpool, Atletico Madrid, Spurs, Newcastle United, Barcelona, Atalanta, Bayern Munich, Harry Kane in Italy for that one. We'll get to all of that. In the meantime, Simon, after the events of Sunday at Ibrox, we're looking on now as the dust begins to settle on those disgraceful scenes following the penalty shootout between Rangers and Celtic in the Scottish Cup. A penalty shootout that Celtic won and Celtic progressed, but thereafter there were ugly scenes on the field of play as some of the fans squared up to each other. I put it that way. Simon, the fallout continues, and yet, after such damaging scenes, why would Rangers and Celtic leave such a vacuum? We haven't heard a word from either.
Well, I suppose it's a case of what kind of messaging do you want? Do you want the research messaging, where they've gone into detail and found the answers to the questions and put out a proper statement which embraces all the challenges that may have happened on Sunday? Or do you want just an optic statement to be able to fall in line with what the media wants to hear, which is utter condemnation? By today's standards, we should perhaps have expected a condemnation from both football clubs to be able to position it. It would make no difference to anybody. The facts are the facts. The fact that you condemn it makes no difference to the circumstances in terms of it's happened. There's going to be a reaction to it. People are going to determine their reaction irrespective of whether the clubs condemn it, which they clearly will. And the Scottish authorities are going to take their actions. So if you're messaging to play the game that people expect you to play, which is get a statement out. We've seen it. We see so many times. Say something about something as quick as you can. And then you say something about it and you find out a week later that it isn't actually as it was. And you've said something that necessarily can be rowed back from.
I get that, but might it have been an opportunity for them? It's up to them.
But who's benefit?
It's up to them to show some kind of unity.
With who?
Well, put it this way. The two sets of supporters have never been so far apart. They always have been. But by God, on Sunday, they proved they're poles apart.
Sections of their fan base.
Sections of their fan bases. How about Rangers and Celtic? In some way, in terms of a statement, even a joint statement, linking arms and saying, we condemn blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And we're going to work together to root out the offenders.
Well, knowing the clubs as you know them, knowing the personalities to some extent as you know them, do you not think that's slightly idealistic in terms of expectation? They can't agree upon anything. They haven't been able to agree to put fans in one another's stadiums for a long time. Apparently, they couldn't even agree upon the fact that the stadium was going to have X amount of fans inside the stadium, and it was the SFA that forced the issue.
Yeah.
That forced the issue, and they've got their hands all over this as well, about the 20% allocation. So to get them to come to some sort of... because we had David Murray, with his particular David Graham, sorry, not David Murray, apologies, David. We had David Graham on yesterday with his particular bias about how it was
the former media officer.
The Union Bears were not as bad as the Green Brigade and whatever else he was trying to impart yesterday, which he got away with a little bit because his bias was clearly evident. And so you can't get two people in the same room to make a joint up decision. You're not going to get the two clubs to come together to put a joint statement out about the condemnation of their fans because they would like to blame one another. They would like to put attribution of blame to one another. So you're not going to get that. So they could have, I suspect, under this auspice of either condemnation or apology that we live with. We've got to have an apology. Ooh, who to and what for? Okay, but they haven't done it. So my view is they must be doing something more meaningful and putting out a state. So we have now done a full research, a full deep dive into what happened, and this is our findings. Rather than being first, which is so much the desire of media, we want to be right in what we're saying. I'd like to think that's what they're doing, but given their attitude and seemingly outlook, it may well be that they're just burying their heads and working out what they're going to do rather than doing anything.
I think many people would agree that that's probably the more accurate assumption.
Okay.
So Rangers have been silent. Celtic have been silent. The police have been speaking. This is Police Scotland Chief Superintendent Emma Croft.
These were utterly disgraceful scenes and must be condemned by everyone involved in football and the wider society. No one should have to face such extreme levels of violence and hostility, and those responsible will be identified and face the consequences. Several officers and members of the public, including a child, were injured as a result of what unfolded. This is totally unacceptable and shameful behaviour. It begs the question, does someone need to be severely injured or worse before this behaviour is treated with the seriousness it deserves? Policing will play its role in addressing these issues, but it requires collective action by a number of organisations with whom we are currently engaging. Crucially, however, I would also call out the need for individuals who see fit to behave in such a despicable manner to take personal accountability. No game of football should be overshadowed by the behaviours of a few. A police inquiry team has been established today to investigate all incidents pertaining to the quarter-final fixture, and I would appeal to any member of the public who has information which may assist those inquiries to contact Police Scotland as soon as possible. I want to give my assurance that our investigation will be very thorough and further arrests will be made in due course. For those involved in this kind of disorder, the message is simple. It is not a question of if, but when we will identify it and come looking for you.
So the police have broken the current state of silence.
They're catching some shrapnel, aren't they? Because people are attributing, clearly and quite vociferously, some of the blame to a lack of policing and a lack of organisation. We discussed it at great length yesterday. My word, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should be not condemning the behaviour of those fans. If this police officer existed in the mid-'80s, she'd have spontaneously combusted with the circumstances she'd have had to confront him with then. So we are in different times. It's clear to me, for whatever reason, and I'm not blaming the police, for whatever reason, there wasn't enough resource deployed. Now, in my view, the reason for that is financial. Clearly financial.
And you were all over that yesterday. Actually, Simon, she spoke to Emma Croft, the chief superintendent, spoke to Sky. She was asked if there were enough police officers available to deal with what happened.
My view was there were enough police officers within the stadium and a flex within those police officers as to what their duties would be, and a sizable number of police officers out with ready to support. But I put that in the context of 2026. I don't have the luxury of a significant number of officers. The club operations should be in a position to respond, and we will support that accordingly. I'm not, in a view, wanting to put more police officers into stadiums. I don't think it's the right thing to do.
I don't have the luxury of a significant number of officers.
Well, there's your answer. You don't have the luxury of a significant number of officers because the consequences of drawing them in to do overtime or whatever else you're able to do to re-resource requires financing. And the football fraternity, in my view, to some extent, shouldn't be paying all of that. We've had this argument before. The head of football operations in policing doesn't come on this show anymore because he doesn't like my disagreements about the fact that he's made a point that there's not enough bobbies on the beat because the British taxpayer is paying too much for football, whereas football pays 6-7 billion into the exchequer. In this instance, this has a different dynamic to it. This is not a domestic fixture. This is additional revenue for the two football clubs that have never been budgeted for. So there's plenty of fat in this equation to have paid the police within reason, whatever they might have required for an individual game where you're going to break the mould. You're going to look at it for a different situation. We haven't had these two clubs together with any volume of fans. Society's not in a great place. There's a lot of background noise. Wouldn't common sense prevail to say maybe not 7,500 of the away fans in? Or if we're insisting upon doing that because we're the SFA and we've got all the clues to all the answers, we're going to make sure that the policing that's required in the event, and if it was overcooked, and if we saw hundreds of coppers inside the stadium and there wasn't a single fart from the Rangers or Celtic fans, then we'd have all gone, oh, well, that was a lot of money that was spent down the drain. But we could have avoided this. And it would have been avoided if there were more police inside the stadium. The answer of the club's resources, what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that the stewards were going to deal with this? The stewards were never going to deal with this. Whether that's right or wrong, whether the club should pay stewards more money to be able to deal with dangerous situations, who knows the answer to that question?
I mean, she says the club operation should be in a position to respond.
No. Then she's suggesting that the club steward should deal with that melee. She's suggesting that these fans should be confronted with stewards that sometimes are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, rather than police and authority in society. And the police on the stadium, I don't agree with the fact we should need police in there, but in the day and age of where we are now, if the police were in there and there was proper resource inside the stadium, which is not their fault, if they haven't got the resource available and the clubs won't pay for it, then why should they provide it in situations like this?
Okay, so we've been hearing from the police. We haven't heard from either club. We're pushing them on it. But we'll do our own detective work, believe me. And when we know, you'll know. It's 10:30.
when I saw the scenes, whether the scale of the scenes were back to the 80s or not, which is my argument that they clearly weren't, there was not a surprise in my mind that there was an issue when you've got the two sets of fans in a combustible environment and large amounts of the opposing side being in the away ground for the first time in significant years. I look at the rules and say, it's interesting about rules being quoted as the SFA enforcing a 20% rule around the stadium capacity, yet the rules in the SPFL require you to provide a certain amount of away fans for the SPFL games, and Rangers and Celtic seem to have ignored that for years. So I don't really understand why they couldn't have ignored it for this game and turned around and said, in the interests of what we think is common sense, right now we don't think it's appropriate to stick 7,500 fans in a football stadium from the opposition right now because we think it's going to lead to problems. Then you look beyond that and go, well, you could have ignored the rules if you wanted to, and that may be me being a little bit cheap on the observation, but notwithstanding it, it's still there. You then look at it and go, if you don't think this was surprising, you think it's disappointing. I bet if I ask Bill Leckie, put aside your disappointment and your unhappiness, are you inherently surprised? Well, probably not. So what was done to prevent it? What was done to ensure that prevention, whether prevention should have to be part and parcel of a bloody football match, is a different argument entirely. What we're dealing with now is another set of circumstances surrounding two football clubs that should be at the pinnacle of Scottish football for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. And you can't strip them out of the cup, because you strip them out of the cup, all of a sudden the commercial revenues of the cup come into play.
Exactly.
We've seen this situation. So what did you do, honestly, when you look down and distill it down to prevent this?
Keith Andrews despises the culture of slamming players who miss penalties.
I think the ones I'm talking about, national heroes that have done it, ridiculed, persecuted. I think it's disgusting. It takes serious courage to do that. He practices that technique a lot. Goes in, everyone's raving about him.
The Brentford head coach says Dango Ouattara is fine after chipping the ball straight into Areola's hands. That allowed West Ham to make the FA Cup quarter-finals.
If I'm his teammate, I'm saying, what are you doing?
All the other pens were good. Some of West Ham's pens, top corner.
West Ham play Leeds in the last 8. Nuno Espirito Santos told us their cut run will help the squad as they push for Premier League survival. Meanwhile, former Spurs defender Sebastian Bassong's told us Harry Redknapp could be a very helpful addition for them in the short term.
The way he used to manage us, it was really man management. He used to put a lot of responsibility onto us because he had these skills to pick up good players and good men in order to play amongst each other.
Spurs go to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League live on talkSPORT tonight. Liverpool's trip to Galatasaray's Rams Park is the early kick-off on talkSPORT 2. Now, Australia have offered asylum to the rest of Iran's women's football team after 5 players claimed asylum. There are fears for their safety if they return home. The squad were called wartime traitors in Iran for not singing the national anthem before a game. And this year's boat race will be live with our colleagues over on Times Radio. They've secured a 3-year deal to cover Oxford versus Cambridge, one of the oldest events in sport. It's live on Easter Saturday. Just download the talkSPORT app to swipe between stations.
Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We are live on talkSPORT. Still loads of reaction to the situation pertaining to the scenes we witnessed on Sunday at Ibrox Stadium in Glasgow following Rangers exiting the Scottish Cup at the hands of Celtic on that penalty shootout, and thereafter the ugly scenes on the field of play. We haven't heard from either club. We have heard from the police, and investigation is ongoing, of course, as you might expect. There's Hugh Simon in Hereford this morning. Good morning, guys. The police in Glasgow shouldn't be occupied by keeping 2 sets of juvenile football fans apart. Should be out keeping the rest of us safe. They probably did a very good job at that huge fire that broke out in the city centre, but not much, of course, is said about that, says Hugh in Hereford.
But
he's right. They've got enough in their plates, haven't they?
That's an assumption. There's an implied criticism. No one's criticising the police.
Yeah.
The police will be very happy with football financing extra overtime for the police officers so they can generate more revenue for themselves. What they're not happy with is having to police things and having officers being redeployed and not getting paid for it in terms of additional revenue for the police. That's what they'll be happy with, having been involved in that situation. Despite the protestations of the police, I know factually they regard it as an income stream. They would just rather have all of the money rather than some of the public purse pay for it.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, Simon, it's a huge night in the Champions League, not least the 5:45 early kickoff. Galatasaray in Istanbul up against Liverpool. It's live on talkSPORT 2. That said, nobody better to talk about this fixture. Former captain of Liverpool, a man who's lifted the European Cup above his head not once, twice, but 3 times, and the former manager of Galatasaray in one person, Graham Souness. Graham joins us live in the show. Graham, good morning.
Good morning, man.
Good morning. It's been a while. How have you been?
How I've missed you too.
Graham, we're going to get on to Galatasaray Liverpool in a second. You were in Glasgow on Sunday to take in the game. The dust is settling. We haven't heard from either Rangers or Celtic, but you, like everybody else, must have been surprised and thoroughly dismayed by the post-match scenes.
Sad, angry, equal amounts. I have to say that what a difference having the Celtic supporters there. The whole room was full. Just added to the atmosphere. It is, in my opinion, the biggest derby in the world. I've not been to the one in Buenos Aires, but that you have to go to an Old Firm game. But unfortunately, I don't think we'll see that again. I think what happened on Sunday will mean that we won't see away supporters in the stadiums again, not in those numbers anyway. So it was sad. It wasn't a great game of football, but that at the end of it just spoiled everything. Because my first thoughts when I was watching it, this is going to be seen throughout the world. What message is that sending about, our football, Scottish football? Sad.
I know Rangers is very dear to your heart, of course, and Scottish football is, of course, it's your roots, it's where you came from. And as you rightly say, Graham, what kind of advert is it at this particular time for the Scottish game and for these two giants of the game?
No matter what you think about Scottish football, Rangers and Celtic are monsters. They're not football clubs; they're institutions. And what makes them institutions is the passion that the supporters have for the clubs. And as always, it's just a small minority spoil it for everyone because there's no doubt about it. I mean, I actually got my phone out before the game and just filmed the scenes and tried to get some atmosphere onto my phone. It is the biggest, the most passionate football match you'll ever go to. But I think it'll be a long time before we see, whether it's at Parkhead or whether it's at Ibrox again, the amount of away supporters in their end.
Do you think either club can be trusted, Graham, to have a sizable away support sometime in the future?
Jim, it's not the clubs. It's a small element of supporters who react, to defeat in a very negative way, and it's.
Do you think? I take your point, Gray, but do you think it's the clubs because they've tolerated these people in terms of the Green Brigade at Celtic or the Union Bears at Rangers and allowed them to get their head of steam up about what they think they can and can't do?
Was it? I don't know. Was it just the group you're talking about coming onto the pitch? I don't know, but I know, generally, as much as they try to control it, alcohol does play a part in it. Unfortunately, I was on the way to the stadium, and on both sides, people are topping themselves up, and that would be before lunch.
Were you?
And I think with the disappointment or the joy of winning,
they react the way they do. Were you? The question I ask of people is, knowing the circumstances as they are between the two clubs, knowing the fact that these two clubs haven't played one another for a long time, with away fans being in of any significance, we've seen it start to creep back in this season, which is great. Were you surprised when you see 7,500, the Scottish SFA apparently enforcing a rule saying you must have 20% inside the stadium? Were you entirely surprised that there was an adverse reaction, or in the back of your mind do you go, "Well, I'm not that surprised. I'm disappointed and I'm depressed."
No. Simon, you're right. No, I'm not that surprised.
Right.
I come back to it. There's so many positives associated with both clubs in terms of what the average supporters feel for their football club. And that can show itself in a negative way. You know, if you're losing or you're winning, whatever way, if you win, they celebrate, it can antagonise the opposition. That leads to another level of disappointment that they're feeling, and it shows itself in an extremely negative way. And I would come back to it. It's a small minority, and some of it would be fueled by alcohol.
Still to hear from the two clubs, Graham. It's Tuesday. This happened on Sunday afternoon. Does that surprise you?
I would think so, yeah. I've not thought about that, but I would think so. I would think that they should be ahead of this criticism. You know, being silent is not going to help them. I think they have to come out and make a statement as quickly as possible.
I mean,
it's a no-win for them, isn't it? Whatever they say, it's a no-win. No doubt there'll be an enormous investigation, and whatever ruling comes out at the end of it, I'm not sure if it'll make any great changes. I think it's just black and white, Jim. I just don't think, like at Parkhead, you couldn't have the Rangers end there at Parkhead full of Rangers supporters, and I don't think we'll see the same at Ibrox. I don't think the Broomloan will be. I don't think that their away end will be completely full again ever.
The reason why I asked you if you're surprised, Greg, is not because I'm being pedantic, because I wasn't surprised when I saw the scenes. Right, okay, they're not anything vaguely resembling what happened in the 80s, but they're still in today's society. They're intolerable. So if I'm not surprised by the potential of it, you're not surprised by the potential of it. That there might have been some reaction from a minority, which is what we're talking about. Are you not disappointed, like I am, going, well, who runs this game? Why did the SFA have to enforce a 20% rule allowing Celtic to have 7,500 fans in there? Why didn't the clubs get more police inside the stadium and pay the bills that the police might require to make sure that we had none of this? Doesn't this all look like a bleeding mess? I know that's the benefit of hindsight, but if you're not surprised by it and you think it could have been a possibility, it could have been avoided.
Well, I think everyone would be hoping that the game has moved on. Everyone would be hoping that those days are behind us, but as you've witnessed on Sunday, they're not. And I'll come back to it, and there's a small element, and then people get caught up in the moment, and the ones who would never think about doing that, whether it's fueled by alcohol or the emotion of winning or the emotion of losing, end up getting involved in it. And it's just, as I've said to you before, I don't think we'll see it again. Those numbers, away supporters coming into either stadium, Ibrox or Parkhead, and it takes so much away from the game, because I'm telling you, before the game, and although it wasn't a great game, both of them still generated an unbelievable atmosphere.
Graham, it almost seems like a sideshow after speaking to you about Rangers Celtic, but it's far from a sideshow. Your former club that you captained with such pride, Liverpool, going in against Galatasaray tonight. And you managed Galatasaray. I remember all these years ago, I was out in Istanbul with you when you had Saunders out there and Venison and people. I mean, this is a great tie, Graham, isn't it?
Well, it's a game of football. It's just, obviously there's supporters everywhere that are extremely passionate about the football clubs, but both at Liverpool, certainly when I was there, where the corporate element has crept in to not just Liverpool, but all English stadiums. And it sort of diminishes that raw energy that you see at Istanbul or in Glasgow at the weekend. It'll be a sensational game. The atmosphere will be incredible. You know, you've been there, Jim. You know what it's like. They go in there, the supporters will be in there 3 hours before the stadium, making all that noise, and you think, how by the time they kick off they'll run out of steam, but that's not the case. And then when Liverpool will have possession, and I expect them to have a fair bit of it, the whole stadium whistles, and it's just the most incredible game of football to watch. A big night in that stadium. They generate an atmosphere that's matched by few, Galatasaray, especially on these nights.
What have you made of Liverpool this season, Graham? Do you think Slot? I mean, we've heard a lot from Slot. We've heard a lot from Slot about how teams should set up against his side and low blocks, denying his opportunities to be able to roll over teams. We've heard him talk about not liking English Premier League football. He finds it unattractive. Has he got found out a little bit this season?
No. I have to say, I thought he was very good last year, and everyone was, because it was going well, bit of a perfect storm for them to win the league last year, but they were consistent, and you don't win the league by accident. And then it's just been excuse after excuse this year, and I'm sorry. When I hear him, he said he had 30 out of 30 preparation notes. He's thrown 27 or 28 in the bin. You know, teams are not saying to Liverpool, You know, we're at Anfield today. Let's give them a really nice game of football and let's play the way they want us to play. They come up with obstacles. And now it's not new, Simon. When I was at Liverpool, like Terry Mack hated playing at Anfield. You know, he was best part of 20 goals a season. He hated it because he had nowhere to run because people sat deep. So it was dropping off, called then low blocks, whatever nonsense they call it. It was sitting deep, dropping off. He had nowhere to run. It was that. Did they try and play football against us? No, they would launch everything into the box. They would try and put a few of us on our back. Sorry, our backsides to see if we really fancied it on the day. If you play for Liverpool, that is the price on the ticket. You're going to be confronted by raw aggression, not so much in the modern game. You're going to be confronted by people wasting time. You're going to be confronted by people launching it into the box. Deal with it. Embrace it. Know it's coming and get on with it and do the business. They did it last year. Parking that for a minute. There were a lot more. I could talk for a long time about it, but basically, they're not as aggressive when they don't have the ball. You know, when you talk about, again, closing down, sorry, modern term, pressing. When you close down, you have to do it collectively. It only takes one to do it at 95%, not 100, when you all go for it, and the whole system breaks down. And I just feel Liverpool, they talk about players in Liverpool's midfield being good at this and good at that. There's some of them are very good in the ball, but not so good at, you know, working hard when you don't have the ball and making life easy for the guys behind you. Because if you're putting the ball under pressure all the time with the front and the midfield, it makes life very easy for your central defenders and a couple of fullbacks. So for me, they're not the same team. And I would imagine that dressing room, you have to point out Salah has not turned up this year. The numbers tell you that. How many games in the last 7 years has he been the difference in terms of creating or scoring a goal that would change a game? That's a big problem for them, replacing that.
Yeah.
Isak, who I think is a player and has proven he can play in our league, is fragile and has been out. That might have made a big difference if he had been replacing Salah's goals. But they'll have to stick together at this time. And I'll say this to finish, because I'm talking a lot. It would not be beyond them to win the Champions League, because they've still got that 90 minutes of greatness in them. And it could happen whenever.
Graham, do Liverpool need to win the Champions League to allow Slot to stay in his job?
Jimmy, I wouldn't answer that one. I just know that they have to improve. You know, he had a glorious year last year. You know, he inherited. You don't get a job normally as a football manager because the club's going well. But that was one of the rare occasions where he walked into Anfield and he inherited a great situation.
Yeah.
Normally the roof's caving in. And, you know, he managed to add, people were saying how different he was doing things. I don't think he changed too much looking at him last year from my eyes. This year, you can bet he has done everything the same. Starting training at the same time, using the same words, using the same training methods, same preparation for games, and it's not happened. So he'll be scratching his head why they've dropped off so much. You can go from, I can't really see you, but you don't go from there. You can go from there to there. You can't go from there, you know, and drop down to being an average team at times. And that's what's happened to them too many times this year.
Yeah. Just to finish, Graham, and you are going well, and we're delighted you've joined us. Would it be un-Liverpool-like to see the club dump Slot so soon after winning the Premier League?
Jim, I wouldn't get into that. I know you want me to I know what you want me to say, but I wouldn't. I think Liverpool is a great football club, and historically, they give their managers lots and lots of time to get it right.
Okay. Graham, as always, thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground there, and I really appreciate you joining us.
Jim, Simon owes me dinner. Can you please nail it down for a time and a very expensive place?
I'll sort that, Graham. I'll be back to you later today.
Thank you, James.
Graham Souness with us live on talkSPORT.
Wrexham boss Phil Parkinson said he was proud of his team's performance.
Yeah, listen, we've got to be immensely pleased with the performance tonight. In so many aspects of the display were good. The way we pressed, the structure, because it's not just about pressing, it's when to press, it's the communication. But some of the football we played as well, I thought was really good. And I stressed in the press conference and to the lads yesterday, we weren't coming into this game just to stop Chelsea. We were coming into it to play ourselves. And we've gone toe-to-toe. We really have. I felt second half we were going to win the game. I could feel it. I really was very confident on the touchline. And moments have gone against us tonight. And it's our first taste of VAR here at the racecourse. And, it takes a bit of getting used to, because those decisions will be, certainly the send-off, I think, will be a big talking point.
Yeah, I think Phil's called it perfectly there. He's talked about the decisions and what had happened during the game, big moments. And, yeah, look, they 1-0 up, pegged back 1-1. Go 2-1 up, get pegged back 2-2. And I've got to say, the second goal, which is so often the lad Doyle who scored, it was a deflection from a shot. And them goals are quite clever goals, because if you just divert the ball as it's coming to you, that it beats any goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper's going one way. And if you get a slight deflection on it, it gets diverted into the bottom corner. And I thought they just absolutely matched Chelsea in every way, shape and form. And to be fair, they must, be proud of what they've done this year in the Championship and in the Cup.
Graham Souness with us moments ago, live on the show. Didn't seem, Simon, to be too keen to be drawn on Arne Slot's future. Didn't want to get involved in that kind of chat. Regardless of that, it's 100 games for Slot tonight as they go in against Galatasaray in Istanbul. This is Slot ahead of it.
Well, first of all, it makes me really proud that I've become the Liverpool manager. And that is going to be my 100th game. I don't think I have a bad track record in those 100 games, although sometimes you get a different feeling about that if I have to listen to everything. But makes me proud, and I'm looking. And it's nice that the 100th game is such a nice game to play. Champions League last 16 away game against Galatasaray. So. But as always, it's never about the manager, it's always about the players. I try to prepare them just as good as all the other 99 games I've done before. But it's always the players who have to then perform And I've been very lucky that I've been given a very good team in both seasons, last season and this season. And I have all the trust that these players will perform at the levels we are used to of a Liverpool team.
Simon, a century for Arne Slot tonight. How would you sum it up?
Well, I think he did very well in his first season. I think he inherited a very good side. Like Graham Souness said a moment ago, that very rarely do you get an opportunity to inherit a side that's in pretty good nick. Was actually going for a quadruple that fell away because perhaps the loss of a manager was changing the direction of the players' mentality, and maybe the dressing room wasn't as strong as we thought it was. But notwithstanding that, he inherited a very good side that was very fortuitous. I have not liked some of the things he said this season, because I thought he was slightly better than some of the things he said, because we all know what managers do. They default to type. When it comes on top, what they do is they find an excuse for their own shortcomings, rather than just go, we're not good enough. It's the opposition are playing in a certain way, or I don't like this. And that's, I suppose it's like asking people not to be Roman if they're in Rome. I suspect they'd all have the same traits. Is he a good manager? Clearly. Did he speak well in that press conference? Absolutely. Are Liverpool the same side? No. Are there reasons behind it? Yes, there are reasons behind it. The loss of Lucas Diaz, the drop of form from Salah, and the issues that surrounded his behaviour prior to the departure for the African Cup of Nations. Isak not being fit, Isak being injured, but albeit when he was fit and in the side, he wasn't good enough, and there was an excuse made for the fact that he wasn't prepared for the season because he wasn't match fit and all this sort of stuff. One must say that irrespective of the loss of players, there's still a squad there that should be doing better than Liverpool doing this season.
Well, that's right. So as a result of that, are you in the camp that thinks he needs to win the Champions League to salvage his job?
I don't know. I'm never in the camp of wanting managers to be fired. Some managers deserve it more than others.
Danny suggested that last week.
Well, I mean, Graham can speak to Liverpool and their succession programmes better than anyone else because he was there, both as a player and a manager. And with that in mind, it's not the Liverpool way just to react. And they'll have all the facts, they'll have all the context, they'll have all the perspective. If they still believe in the vision that Arne Slot is able to deliver them the outcomes they brought him in for, because they brought him in to be successful. And success is winning things for Liverpool. It's winning things. Klopp didn't win as many things as his reputation suggests they perhaps could have done, because ultimately Klopp goes out with all the hero status, and understandably so. But he didn't win as many things as perhaps the myth of Klopp details, and that's not me detracting from him, because I think, in my view, I think he's the most exciting football manager that I've ever seen, managing a Liverpool side, and there's been some great ones prior to that, and I think he's an exciting manager for football, full stop. I think his brand of football is my preferred diet. Thank you very much. But the fact of the matter is he didn't achieve what the reputation potentially and the noise around him suggests, because other managers have achieved far more.
Yeah.
Now, does it mean that Slot subsequently loses his job? Well, depends what you've got as an option to replace him. Depends if Alonso's available and you think he's better because he produced that Leverkusen side that was brilliant and couldn't manage Madrid. Depends if someone else is available that you think could be better. It's all about what is better rather than, do I need to fire somebody? If you haven't got anybody better and there really isn't somebody better, and you're confident that the one step back will eventually produce 2 steps forward, then you stay with what you've got.
Then you go with it. Galatasaray up against Liverpool tonight. It kicks off 5:45, remember, and it's live on talkSPORT 2. Very favourable reaction to Graham Souness and some of the things he's been saying on the show. No doubt we will return to the Rangers Celtic situation before long, probably before we go at 1 o'clock. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan as we approach 11 o'clock. We're live on talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Has the hiring of Edu destabilised the best season in a generation at Nottingham Forest? And how much responsibility does Evangelos Marinakis have to take for it? We understand that he's been told to stay away from the City ground pending a termination of his contract at the end of the season. I know that Forest fans will be reluctant to criticise Marinakis, but is this a mess of his own making? Because he had a manager who was very successful, almost took them to the Champions League. He started to interfere, and all of a sudden they ended up dropping down eventually into the Europa League, but then they lost to Nuno Espirito Santo very quickly. So is this got to be on Marinakis' shoulders?
Of course it is. And do you blame Nuno Santo when you've got a sporting director coming in and probably not giving you a say on any players that you're bringing in? What do you expect as a manager? And if you speak to the older generation of managers, they'll say, what? Someone's telling me what players are coming in, and then I'm going to get judged.
That is the way of the world now, though.
I know, but then is that fair as a manager? Like we said in previous shows, sporting directors should be coming on and doing press. You're the one bringing in the players. The manager's doing the best they can with these players. They might have wanted 10 other players that you have said no to. Some of the players that they brought in Nottingham Forest, Douglas Luiz on loan didn't work. Zinchenko on loan didn't work. Amari Hutchinson, 37.5 million. Only one Premier League goal in 22 appearances. McAtee, 30 million. Hasn't worked. Ndoye hasn't worked. Bakwa hasn't worked.
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan van range. Scoring a winning hat-trick of performance, payload and price. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van Centre.
With your headlines at 3 minutes past 11, I'm Nick Ellaby. Good morning. Some breaking news. It's reported Joey Barton has been arrested for assaulting a man on a golf course. He was one of two men detained outside Huyton and Prescott Golf Club at 9 p.m. on Sunday. The alleged victim was taken to hospital with injuries to his ribs and his face. This is a developing story. More as we get it. Now, Keith Andrews despises the culture of ridiculing players for missing penalties. He says Dango Ouattara was courageous to step up. Simon Jordan's not surprised the Brentford boss is backing his man when the stakes are low.
It's man management. What it is I've got him on side. I'm not going to take him offside. No benefit in that. I'm not going to go after them or an individual for a decision that was about himself rather than necessarily the team.
Ouattara Panenka spot kick straight into Areola's hands, allowing West Ham to make the FA Cup quarter-finals. As the author of 12 Yards, The Art and Psychology of the Perfect Penalty, Ben Littleton reminds us, the trick for Panenka is a quick run-up.
And one thing that Dango didn't do so well was the run-up. It was a pretty slow run-up, and his standing foot was pointing centrally towards the goal. And some goalkeepers look at that standing foot as a clue to see where it's pointing.
Ben says we should be praising Areola instead of criticising Ouattara's bravery. Now, ahead of Tottenham's Champions League tie at Atletico Madrid tonight, we asked former Spurs defender Sebastian Bassong if Harry Redknapp is the man to save them.
Over the course of a whole season, I don't think so. I think Harry would be very useful in some part of this season to deal with some particular situations.
Bassong says Harry's a great man manager and will be a good short-term option for Premier League survival. And Australia have offered asylum to the rest of Iran's women's football team. That's after 5 players claimed asylum there. More at talksport.com.
talkSPORT News.
Oil prices are going down after Trump said the war may nearly be over, and a man's been charged with the murder of Ian Huntley. More from the news team in half an hour.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. Come rain or shine, we've got your electric car covered with 400 EV ready centres, so you can drive away happy every time.
Cloudy for most of us, patchy rain in the west, getting windier later before some brighter spells this afternoon. More rain arriving in the west this evening.
Good morning, everybody. 6 minutes past 11 o'clock this Tuesday morning. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We are live on talkSPORT. Tomorrow, this show between 10 and 1 o'clock will come live from Cheltenham. Sadly, Mr. Jordan has said a polite no thanks to that. I will be heading off with producer Luke and assistant producer Joe as soon as this show is finished today. And my very good friend and colleague, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, is waiting with open arms to welcome us down at Cheltenham, and Alex will join us live on the show tomorrow. And judging by who I've heard may also be joining us, I'm not going to reveal the identity of it, but it's a very, very big name in the world of football, and I'm really looking forward to that. This is your last chance. You want to reconsider. You could nick round to that apartment of yours and come back with a pole with a bag in the end of it and say, I'm ready to go.
Not if you tied my tongue to the back of a bus. Drag me to Cheltenham. Do I want to come?
That's very kind. But you said no to that, but yes to the World Cup in the US. That's fine.
That's debatable as well.
Just check. That's debatable, he says as well. Alex Crook, what would you do with a guy like this?
Well, he's missing out, Jim. All the fun we're going to have tomorrow and the rest of the week, he's absolutely missing out, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah, I feel it, yeah.
Absolutely right. Alex, let's get into some detail regarding a few big names in the game. Let's start with Crescencio Somerville at West Ham. West Ham go through in the Cup last night. But a problem with him this morning, is there?
Yeah, there is. I was surprised, Jim, that West Ham got through that tie. I made Brentford the favourites. Obviously, West Ham having a relegation battle to focus on, but fair play to them. And they've got potentially a winnable quarter-final now at home to Leeds. But how much part in that will Crescencio Somerville play? How much part will he play in the rest of the season? That's the question that West Ham are asking this morning. I'm told, having been forced off through injury, he's to have a scan today. And my sources at West Ham are concerned that this could be potentially a problem that could sideline Somerville for a number of weeks. And obviously, that would be a massive blow to their hopes of staying in the Premier League. He's probably, in the second half of the season, been their best player, certainly going forward.
OK, we'll know more in the course of the day. Nottingham Forest, we hear, have told Edu to stay away from the club as his departure seems to edge ever closer. What's the latest there?
Well, we spoke about this, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, about the fact that Edu was under real pressure heading into the final weeks of the season. Obviously not gone well for Nottingham Forest. They're on their fourth manager of the campaign. A lot of the signings they made in the summer haven't really worked out, and having been seen as a bit of a coup when they managed to prize him away from Arsenal, Edu, as Evangelos Marinakis' global head of football, overseeing all of his various football clubs, it's turned into a fairly disastrous appointment. And you're right, he's basically on gardening leave, Jim. I think Edu, he's not attending matches, he's not a regular visitor to the training ground, and I think effectively he's been told that his tenure has come to an end. They're not making it public or making any public statements, Nottingham Forest, because they don't want to detract from their fight for survival, but they will be looking for a new director of football come the end of the season. I wonder now if they regret losing Ross Wilson, who's gone off to Newcastle, and he's a difficult man to work for, Evangelos Marinakis, there's no question about that, but Ross Wilson seemed to manage that situation very well.
What do you make of what goes on behind the scenes at that club? There's been a lot of upheaval, Simon, and now it appears that Marinakis can't work with Edu. That appears to be the situation.
Well, I think the managerial appointment side of things is nothing to do with the sporting director, I suspect. I suspect that's as much to do with the decisions that were made by Marinakis, the fallout with Spirito Santo, the desire to pursue Postecoglou, the introduction of Sean Dyche. They all probably were Marinakis decisions, so the sporting director can't have any blame laid at his door. I don't know how difficult he is. I think some of the most... anybody that's demanding will be considered to be difficult, and you have to be good at your job. I mean, back in the day, was Ross Wilson responsible for the deluge of players? How long was Ross Wilson his sporting director for, by the way? Alex?
A good 3 seasons, I think, at Forest.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, Alex,
so the narrative when Tottenham came up, that there was an absolute bun fight of players descending into the dressing room that people didn't even know the names of, is now being attributed to a sporting director that did wonderful things for them.
Well, we'll keep across it.
Times change.
But I mean, we do know that there's been a bunch of upheaval at the football club, because elsewhere, Nuno Espirito Santo is fighting his former employers, Nottingham Forest, on the pitch, of course, but off it as well, Alex.
Yeah, there's some kind of dispute over the way that his tenure there came to an end. I'd imagine it's regarding the payoff, because the way it works now, and actually it's a bit of a myth that when a manager is sacked from a football club, they get their entire contract paid up. What happens more often than not these days is they're put on gardening leave. They get their wages as they would do if they were employed up until the point where they joined another club. Now, obviously, Nuno went back to work very quickly with West Ham United. I'd imagine whatever dispute they're having is centred around that and the level of payoff that he feels he's entitled to.
What's the latest on, from a situation of almost contract termination to a new deal? Callum Wilson has agreed a 1-year contract extension with West Ham. Any more on that?
Well, this is an incredible turn of events when you go back to the January transfer window, and Callum Wilson was actively trying to leave the football club. He was in negotiations with a hierarchy about having that pay-as-you-play deal terminated because obviously they signed a couple of strikers in Pablo and Castellanos, and Callum Wilson felt his game time would be limited. Then he came off the bench, scored a couple of important goals, and actually West Ham decided, you know what, we need to keep this guy around. And now we understand at talkSPORT he has indeed agreed a new deal taking him until the end of next season. I think it's sensible for West Ham because I think Callum Wilson probably, when he's fit and firing, and there obviously are ongoing doubts about his fitness, is their best finisher. And also, if the worst does happen and they end up in the Championship, I think Callum Wilson is someone who can score a lot of goals in that division.
Alex, let's finish on Tottenham Hotspur. And tonight, they find themselves in Madrid up against Atletico Madrid. And that's no mean feat to think that they'll go there to the Metropolitano and get anything in their current state. Or might they? And what else do we know about Igor Tudor?
Well, if you're an optimistic Tottenham fan, you'll point to the fact their European form has been much better than what they've served up week in, week out in the Premier League. Still the only team in the Premier League not to win a game in 2026. If you're more of a pessimistic Tottenham fan, you'll probably look at the fixtures they had in the league phase. 4 of the teams they played are already out of the competition. 4 more had to go via the playoffs. So this is their stiffest test. Having said that, Atletico Madrid aren't the sort of defensive force of old under Diego Simeone. So I don't think it's necessarily a foregone conclusion that Spurs lose, but confidence looks low. I'm not sure the players are buying into what Igor Tudor wants from them. So I think they will ultimately go out of Europe, and maybe that might help in terms of putting points on the board in the Premier League. But if they were to lose tonight, and there's every chance they do, and then they lose at Liverpool at the weekend, I think the Tottenham board have got a big decision to make, whether this appointment from them to hire Igor Tudor, unproven in the Premier League, a firefighter but quite a disciplinarian type manager, whether that actually has been the wrong move, and do they need someone with links to the club, someone like Robbie Keane? Do they need a motivator in the Harry Redknapp mould? I'm not sure that Igor Tudor can survive 2 bad defeats in the space of a few days. I think Tottenham could well be looking for their 3rd manager of the season.
Alex, looking forward to seeing you at Cheltenham later today. They've rolled the dice on Igor Tudor, haven't they, Simon?
I don't know what they've done. I don't know what their thought processes was. I don't know what their selection criteria was, why they alighted upon him, what the intellectual capital that they drew upon to make that decision. Only they know that. So, as it stands at this moment in time, did we expect them to beat Arsenal? No. But the last 2 games against Palace and Fulham, neither one of those sides are mugs when they're on their game. So it was always going to be a difficult game for Spurs. Spurs didn't help themselves against Crystal Palace by going 1-0 up against the run of play, but then conceding a penalty and losing their captain.
But we were told that he makes an immediate impact wherever he goes. Well, he hasn't. He's done the opposite.
Well, I don't know what he does. I've not studied his record. I mean, they must have had their own thought processes about why they think this idea that this lazy thinking that because you're associated with a club that somehow creates an outcome. It didn't create an outcome for Aussie Ardealers, did it? There was no one more associated with Tottenham than Aussie Ardealers. If you're good enough to manage Tottenham Hotspur or any club, and you happen to have played there before, and you can got the right credentials and the right currency, that's the primary focus behind it. Now, whether Robbie Keane, and I know Robbie has done relatively well in his 2 appointments overseas and has grown up and become a mature football manager now. So there's a potential for Robbie to be managing, but he's got no. What's Robbie Keane's reference point towards relegation battles in them? Does he know about those then, does he?
Right. Well, we look forward to seeing what Igor Tudor's Tottenham can do tonight in Madrid against Atletico in the Champions League. First leg, of course, over there. It's 11:15. Jim White, Simon Jordan, live in talkSPORT with Selco where the trade goes. Igor Tudor, the same Igor Tudor, concentrated in taking whatever positives he could find out of that result.
They're disappointed. They wanted more. We are aware of that. We also want to give more. Fortunately, this is the moment that we pay everything. Maybe it will sound strange, but I believe more after this game than I believe before. I saw something. I need to choose the right guys, because the boat, I said, now is going in direction that I want to go, that need to go, and who is in the boat can stay. Otherwise, can bow down. How you say that? Leave the boat. So when the other players will come back and choosing the rights, I'm sure that we'll have good teams and the victory will come back.
That was Igor Tudor grasping onto the positives as he saw them after the home defeat to Palace. But Simon, I think, if I remember rightly, you said if they lose to Fulham, they lose to Palace in mortal danger.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they've got. I mean, the only thing that will keep Spurs up at this moment in time is the other teams beneath them don't close the gap, because right now the only thing that's holding them up is the other teams' previous performance. I mean, there's not a lot we can take from the Palace game. He went hard after the players. So and it didn't get much of a reaction, did it? So that to me was him looking at things, saying, "Okay, well, I said what I said. It didn't get me very much, so I'm going to have to perhaps change tack and say I saw something in the second half, which is we lifted a leg."
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. We're ready for the action. Are you? Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus. Gambleaware.org.
Sean Martin joins us from BetMGM. We're going to look at some of the events and the odds round and about them. And of course, Sean, got to start with day one at the Cheltenham Festival. What are you thinking?
Morning, lads. Yes, a massive few days ahead. One of the biggest days and weeks of the year. The Cheltenham Roar, the Arkle, the Mares Hurdle, the Champion Hurdle. I know you're not necessarily the biggest racing fans, but the whole thing's just such a vibe, I think. 28 races over 4 days, all kicks off today with the Supreme at 1:20. And we're celebrating the start of that festival, Jim, at BetMGM by offering all customers a completely free bet to use on any race on day one. If you were to use it on the very first race, the Supreme, Matt Gibson, when he was on with you guys yesterday, mentioned a runner called Mighty Park going for Willie Mullins. He's had 8 winners in the Supreme before. Mighty Park was 7-2 yesterday when Matt mentioned him, now out to 13-2. And of course, the feature race of the day is the Champion Hurdle at 4 o'clock. Lossiemouth, 13-8 favourite for that fantastic name. And should mention as well, if anyone listening is not already a BetMGM customer, we're offering new customers the chance to bet £10 and get £40 in free bets to use across all the sports action this week as well, Jim.
You cannot believe how good BetMGM are to their customers.
Fantastic.
As Sean has just outlined.
Just the generosity. The thought of going to Cheltenham, I'd rather get a season ticket at Brighton, listen to Beatles, Bee Gees on loop, sitting next to Steve Parish for a season.
What is it about Cheltenham that you don't like?
I hate horse racing.
You don't like horse racing?
Not in the slightest.
Okay. Were you ever of a mind to buy a horse when you were at the peak of your wealth?
Nope.
No? No,
I bought a horse that ended up getting an Olympic medal for Ben Maher in the Beijing Olympics, but that was in dressage, not in horse racing.
Oh, dressage.
But I don't like horse racing. Maybe it's because once upon a time I bet on a horse called Sellers Flyer at the Derby, and then bought Palace the next month. And maybe that was I think it came last, fell at the first.
Only Simon could tell us that he did his bit for dressage, Sean. How wonderful.
Yeah.
Sean, so much for that. What about the Champions League tonight? What are you thinking?
Dressage over racing, that didn't surprise me much, I don't think, Simon. Sorry.
Don't be cheeky, Sean. Don't be cheeky. Or we'll start talking about Celtic and the uproar up there.
Carry on, Sean.
What a follow-up to Cheltenham with Champions League is, though, Jim, isn't it? 3 Premier League sides in action. Liverpool away to Galatasaray in the early kick-off at 6:15, 7-10 to win the game. Gala 16-5, so over 3-1 for them to beat Liverpool at home for a second time this season. That would be. They've only ever lost 1 of their 9 games against English sides in Europe. Later into the evening, Spurs, an unenviable task, I suppose you could say, of going to Madrid to face Diego Simeone's Atletico. 5-1 Spurs are to win, 7-2 the draw. Probably reflects where Spurs have been at lately. But Atletico, not got a great record against English clubs, actually, lads. 1-10, I think it is. Although obviously odds on at 12-25 to do the business tonight. And last, but certainly not least, potentially game of the night for me. I don't even know if there's a potentially about it. St James's Park, Newcastle versus Barcelona for the second time this season. The Magpies unbeaten in 5 Champions League games now. You can get 39-20, so just under 2-1 for them to grab a win. Just over 2-1 for Barca as well, and almost 3-1 the draw. I don't know about you guys, but I do fancy Newcastle to at least leave themselves in with a chance for the second leg. And yeah, it's 20-1 if you fancy all 3 English sides to win tonight, or depending on your disposition, 16-1 for the Galatasaray Barca Atletico treble as well, guys.
It's good, Sean. You've outlined it well, Simon. I think Newcastle, they've got to be staying in the tie come the end of the match tonight, haven't they? That's basically what it comes down to, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be disappointed in their performance against Man City. I know there was an attribution towards tiredness, but when Man City went up again, I know there was some questions Martin Keown was raising about the Newcastle midfield not being able to cope with Man City. But Man City just went up a level and Newcastle couldn't go with them.
Yeah.
Now, Barcelona are at that level with Man City and have the capability of taking the game away from Newcastle very quickly. So from the point of view of hoping Newcastle do well, I want them to do well. I want Eddie Howe to do well. I would like them to knock Barcelona out of this competition. My nose tells me that they won't, and they're going to have a very difficult time tonight.
Okay, plenty of action in the Championship tonight, Sean.
Coventry now is short as 6-1 on after 5 wins on the spin to win the title. Middlesbrough consolidated second again with 2 wins in the bounce themselves. Millwall hot on their heels, while Southampton, probably the form side along with Coventry, they're floating about evens to make the top 6, so the market makes it almost a bit of a shootout with Wrexham and or Hull. A few of them are in action tonight. Wrexham actually play Hull at the racecourse, 22-25 favourites for that. Millwall at home to Derby, even money. And elsewhere, Ipswich, who are still 4th as well, lest we forget, you're getting 3-4, so just under even money as well there. Wrap those 3 up in a treble, and it's around the 5.5-1 mark, Jim, which is pretty decent, I reckon, actually.
Yeah. The Championship is really getting interesting. Can you imagine if Wrexham can do it? They play Hull tonight.
Yeah.
What a hell of a story it will be, Simon. If somehow they find a way, get the playoffs, get up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it will be a remarkable achievement. Obviously, there's been a lot of change now. The ownership model has changed. The investment from Apollo Capital has put a lot of money into the football club, so the valuation is high. But they're on a quest of a wave of momentum. They played well against Chelsea, but that's an FA Cup.
Yeah.
They're coming into the business end now. Then, can they get in the playoffs? Absolutely, they can get in the playoffs.
Yeah. I like where they try as well, Sean. It's been announced that Ryan Reynolds and Ron McElhenney will be commentating on Wrexham Swansea on Friday. The commentary will be an alternative offering away from the normal Sky coverage. It's going to be hosted by David Prutton, and it's called Live from Wrexham with Rob and Ryan. Why not? Why not? It's different.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What does it mean, alternative commentary? I don't know what that. What does that mean we should expect?
Well, not the traditional way of catching up with the game with the Sky commentator who normally would be X. On that night, yes, he is there. But alternatively, you could link into Robin Ryan commentating. I mean, I quite like that.
Kind of like, remember the Sky used to do fan cam, that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. That would end up in a bit of a rumpus now and again.
I mean, Man City did something recently, didn't they, with Noel Gallagher, who did some commentary, I think, with Sky, didn't he?
Right.
Commenting on the game. It's interesting because you've got these two Americans that are ownership.
Yeah.
So you're going to hear owners from an entertainment point of view. It's an entertainment product. So in this instance, having two owners, or whatever their shareholding now is, but owners in principle, that are going to be commenting on a game, and people are going to hear how they react to the moments in the game. So if that's interesting to people, then it's interesting.
It is interesting. Would you have done it when you were the owner of Palace?
No.
As a bit of a one-off?
No.
Commentator of the night, Simon Jordan? No?
No, I don't think so, no.
Good evening, everybody. Listen, thank you very much indeed. Incidentally, I want to pick you up on a couple of things. I want to pick this guy up, whoever this is. Fair play to Simon, not going to Cheltenham, who, unlike Jim, doesn't jump on anything that comes with hospitality.
That's true.
Jim would go to the opening of a stamp shop if it came with a freebie. There's no hospitality involved, my friend. It's a normal show, 10 to 1, live on talkSPORT. As far as hospitality, I am interested. What with being in my 15th year of total and absolute and delightful sobriety.
It doesn't have to be a drink, does it? It can be a nice bit of nosh.
Now,
you'll be up for that, mate. You'll be in there quicker than a quick thing from Quickland.
You've been caught with your pants down, metaphorically, many times, because your little tale there about what you did. What did you tell me about dressage and Ben Maher?
Yeah.
What did you do? You
put the money up for him to have a horse for one of the Olympics. I think it was the Beijing one.
All right, for dressage.
Yes.
All right. Jim, tell Mr. Jordan, says Paul in Knots, Ben Maher is a show jumper. It's never dressage.
Well, you know, that's what shows my level of expertise, isn't it?
Oh,
my level of interest.
You had to get that right. You were throwing money at the guy.
Well, mate, I look at the players I bought back in the day, so I can't get everything right, can I? Okay. Clearly not.
Okay, and you said you didn't fancy horse racing because your horse might have fallen at Epsom. Someone saying that they don't have fences at Epsom.
I didn't say Epsom. I said Derby.
It seems that you did.
No, yeah. I meant Ascot. Ascot.
There you go.
Royal Ascot, yeah.
Oh, what's in that name? It's only a race course.
Exactly, around the corner from where I live.
You got it wholly and completely wrong. Thanks to Sean Martin. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18 plus. GambleAware.org.
It was pathetic yesterday. Absolutely pathetic, lads.
Yeah, very true, mate.
Shocking. So, all right, so where are you off now? You off to the airport?
I'm at West Ham tonight, and then I've got a good couple of days, mate. I'm Atletico Madrid, Spurs, and then Real Madrid, Manchester City, both in Madrid. So I'm having a wee chat. I'm maybe get back on Friday, but I don't know, mate. But you'll be carrying a can, no problem at all. With those.
Well, Andy's coming Friday as well, so we're going to have
brilliant.
We're going to have a great week. It's very foggy at the moment, but that doesn't matter. That'll lift by the time the tapes go up on Tuesday in the Supreme. Can't wait, really can't wait. It's going to be such an open, good racing as well, and loads of fans. I've had so many calls and texts. Can you get me a ticket? I'm coming down. Crikey.
Yeah.
So many people coming. It's going to be magic.
He's got a ticket taking you are.
I know.
It's going to be amazing, lads. I was listening to the show this morning. The show's been brilliant. John, it's a great spot you've got there, obviously. I heard Simon on. I mean, the build-up's just going to be fantastic. I can guarantee I'll be watching it. Mark will be there. We'll have the phone and the iPads out and we'll be watching it, mate. So, best of luck to you all.
Ali, what Ali, those games in Madrid, what are you thinking?
Oh, crikey. You'd be a brave man that would say Atletico Madrid won't beat Spurs, do you know what I mean? To be honest with you. Yeah. And then the other one, Andy, Ray, I think Real Madrid have got problems, I really do. Well documented problems. I could see actually City winning the game. I think City will go through in the tie. I could actually see them winning the game in Madrid, to tell you the truth.
Keith Andrews despises the culture of slamming players who miss penalties.
I think the ones I'm talking about, national heroes that have done it, ridiculed, persecuted. I think it's disgusting. It takes serious courage to do that. He practices that technique a lot, goes in, everyone's raving about him.
The Brentford head coach says Dango Ouattara is fine after chipping the ball straight into Areola's hands. That allowed West Ham to make the FA Cup quarter-finals.
If I'm his teammate, I'm saying, what are you doing?
All the other pens were good. Some of West Ham's pens, top corner.
West Ham play Leeds in the last 8. Nuno Espirito Santo told us their cup run will help the squad as they push for Premier League survival. Meanwhile, former Spurs defender Sebastian Bassong's told us Harry Redknapp could be a very helpful addition for them in the short term.
The way he used to manage us, it was really man management. He used to put a lot of responsibility onto us because he had these skills to pick up good players and good men in order to play amongst each other.
Spurs go to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League live on talkSPORT tonight. Liverpool's trip to Galatasaray's Rams Park is the early kick-off on talkSPORT 2. Now, Australia have offered asylum to the rest of Iran's women's football team after 5 players claimed asylum. There are fears for their safety if they return home. The squad were called wartime traitors in Iran for not singing the national anthem before a game. And this year's boat race will be live with our colleagues over on Times Radio. They've secured a 3-year deal to cover Oxford versus Cambridge, one of the oldest events in sport. It's live on Easter Saturday. Just download the talkSPORT app to swipe between stations.
Good morning, everybody. Just gone 11:30. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We are live in talkSPORT, and of course we're also live on YouTube. Wherever you want to watch this show, Samsung, Android, Google TV, even Prime Video, you can watch and enjoy the show live. And many of you are doing that. The numbers are spectacular, and we are delighted that you are doing that. Earlier on, we were talking about the events on Sunday at Ibrox, Rangers against Celtic. Martin O'Neill's Celtic went through on penalties in that Scottish Cup tie. But there was a lot of talk afterwards, of course, with what went on the field of play. We heard from former Rangers manager Graham Souness. Graham also looked ahead to his former club Galatasaray going in against his former club Liverpool tonight in the Champions League. But we are still to hear officially from Rangers and Celtic regards the events on the field of off the field of play, or kind of on the field of play, if you know what I mean, following that penalty shootout at Ibrox on Sunday. I'm delighted to say someone who is a very close link to this show, the Celtic manager, Martin O'Neill, joins us live. Martin, good morning.
Hello, Jim. You okay?
I'm good, Martin. It's good to hear your voice again. Simon and I talk about you a lot, of course, and we watch with great interest what you are doing up there while you've been away from this show. You're now, of course, well and truly involved in your second interim spell at the football club. Martin, do you feel that what was a great achievement by you on Sunday, eliminating Rangers and going through in the Cup, has been somewhat overshadowed by what happened after the match?
Well, there's no question that it's been the result itself has been overshadowed by events. And I know. Listen, I'm certainly not the official mouthpiece for the football club, and I accept that there's been no statements been put out. So at this moment, I think that sometimes in the past, and I'm guilty of this myself, making some hasty remarks and then repenting at leisure. In fact, I've spent a lifetime doing that. But I'm not as I said to you, I'm not the official mouthpiece for it. From my own viewpoint as the manager, obviously a great result for us to win. We were short of some of our senior players, but people stepped up to the mark from that. But then the scenes at the end, which I thought were scenes of joy and happiness and stuff like this here, yeah, I know the crowd spilled over, and obviously there's great potential then for serious harm to be done. Absolutely, I agree with that. The interesting thing about it, Jim, and I think there's talk about why was there 7,000 people allowed into it, and I think it's been covered in many aspects, because different set of rules. SPL have different set of rules to the Scottish FA, and in all honesty, I've been the manager there 25 years ago. Obviously, I don't think we played Rangers at Ibrox in the Cup, but we certainly played them twice a season for 5 years. So that's, my calculations, about 10 times. And we had the full allocation of tickets. We had 7,000 people there. And I don't think there was ever a pitch invasion at any given stage. We both won and we've lost. And in 2003, we came with the year that we were trying to get to the UEFA Cup final, players in great joyous mood, or fans going to that. And I was a big advocate, I must admit, really big, from a distance, an advocate of feeling that without the away fans, the full allocation of away fans, I thought the Old Firm game, still a fantastic fixture, no question about it, had lost some of its lustre. And I thought, and the noise emanating from Ibrox, both last Sunday and the Sunday before that, even though we'd only 2,500 people, was something I have not heard for a long, long time. Maybe Celtic playing Liverpool way back in 2003, have I heard a noise emanating from a stadium like that. So there's something really magical about it, and I'm really obviously quite saddened by the events, and saddened seemed almost like as if you're minimizing or downplaying or things like this here. But overall, it's a shame, because I think the things that I was hoping that would happen and happened for a long time may now not happen anymore. The full allocation, both at Ibrox and Celtic, maybe been taken away.
Funnily enough, Martin, that's Graham Souness was saying something very similar earlier on this morning. Somewhere in there, though, Martin, I'm listening very closely to you. Do you still think an Old Firm away support, and a sizable one, going forward, could and should be admitted to the rival stadium across the city?
Right. From my viewpoint, I'm obviously there's going to be a lot of toing and froing here about what happened, the policing, all that type of stuff. It's not from me, Jim, and just at this moment, please, without having proper analysis of the situation, for me to go into it, please. I'm not pushing it to the side at the end of it all, but really from that viewpoint, I would love if there was a serious consideration to be looking at these particular things, what happened, what could have been avoided. But I honestly think that in terms of atmosphere, there was nothing like it. And I'm talking about going there to a hostile atmosphere at Ibrox, where you're actually there perversely, you get some sort of like intoxicated joy from it. Joy might be too strong a word, but at the end of it all, it really was amazing in both occasions, both Sundays, and to replicate that at Celtic Park with a full crowd of Rangers fans in, I still think something would be lost with the Old Firm fixture if that. And I'm sure, at the end of it all, people are going to look at it and say, well, listen, 7,000 people at Ibrox, or whatever the crowd would be, maybe more at Celtic Park, just cannot be policed. I don't know. is the answer.
Yeah.
But I still think something would be seriously lost again if that atmosphere throughout the game is anything to go by.
Martin, I know you well enough to ask you, and we'll move on because I want to talk about your achievement in a second. But
please don't. There's nothing to talk about in terms of achievement. Seriously, we have really.
Well, it's another one you go
Jim,
over your great rivals.
That is nice. That is nice, and it's yeah. But we still have another game to play them, and we've got a lot of matches to go. So there's been nothing gained whatsoever. And please, so if you're going to be asking,
but that's twice in a week you've come back at them, Martin, and you've left with the spoils, really.
Yeah, we've shown in the first half, the previous Sunday, we might as well have stayed at Celtic Park, and we're 2-0 down in the game, long way back at Ibrox. So so showed us some fighting spirit. There's no question about that there, to come back in the game and actually dominate proceedings in the second half, which was great. So we got out of that to a 2-2. Then we have to come back again. As I said to you, even more intoxicating in many aspects. But and to do it, considering you would a few setbacks just before the game, we lost Kieran Tierney and we lost Callum McGregor, our captain, who's been like absolutely inspirational. In fact, I find out that in the dressing room, he's doing my job for me at the end of the day. So seriously, I'm cheerleading from inside the club.
Martin, Simon's going to come in a second. I just wanted to ask you this before Simon comes in.
I don't want Simon to talk to me.
Was it when you went back into the away dressing room on Sunday? That's when you realised something was seriously amiss out on the pitch, because you were on the pitch and it seemed to be kicking off at that stage around you.
Yeah.
I even saw you getting a selfie taken. There was nothing you could do with that.
It's funny. It shows you what an old man is actually thinking about, really. When you've got some 15-year-old lads coming up and asking you for a selfie at Ibrox, when I couldn't wait, I went up to my usual thing is just that to acknowledge the away fans just for a couple of seconds and then getting back in again, and that's been what I've done for ages. Just an acknowledgement, not a going over and a rip-roaring cheer or anything, and just a hand in the air just to acknowledge the crowd. Then I'm a couple of 15-year-old lads stopping for a selfie, and I think this is crazy. An old man getting a selfie is just ridiculous. And
Can I speak now? Can I speak now? Are you going to filibuster? Are you going to filibuster this?
I believe, Simon. Just sorry. I believe you, since I've been gone for quite some considerable time, you have been in devastating form, really.
I don't know, mate.
You're devastating form. So that's the only compliment I'm going to pay you.
Thank you, mate.
So please, and I do not want you to ask me one question.
I'm going to ask you a football question.
Oh, no, even worse.
No, I am going to ask you one, because I unfortunately, given the fact you've been up there, I'm dragged reluctantly, kicking and screaming, to watching Scottish football more. Right? And I've watched the games where you played Kilmarnock, and I've watched the games where you played Rangers. What is it you're having to say at half-time that you're not saying at the start of a game? Because there's a polar difference between the sides. I watch you against Kilmarnock. You were dreadful in the first half. You come back and win 3-2. You're getting games won in the last minutes and surviving by the skin of your teeth in these games. Against Rangers, you were dead on your feet. You were battered in the first half against Rangers outside. What are you saying at half-time that's not being said at the beginning of the game?
No. Well done. That's not even a compliment.
It wasn't. No.
Right. Okay. It was meant to be. You said to me, the team has been dreadful in the first half. That's because they've had a dreadful first team talk or a first half talk. That's as simple as this here. And I can only improve at half time because it's been so dreadful in the first instance. So there we go.
You're a facetious sod. That's not much of an answer, is it?
Listen, honestly, as I said to you, I've got the captain not only on the field, fantastic, but doing the job for me off the field and in the dressing room as well, honestly. And Has it been more difficult, Martin? When I know you're going to be tactful and you're going to tap dance around certain things, right? No. But you said that the squad needed certain improvements. You didn't get much support in the January window. I'm not asking you to criticise the club. Has it been more difficult coming back with a longer spell, with, again, the expectation of you walking on water and that everything's going to be all right now that you've come back? Has it been more difficult this time round? Absolutely. You knew that when you went in there, first of all, you were in for a short period of time. As I said to Dermot Desmond, the major shareholder, said you could be in for 2 weeks or 2 months. As it turns out, it was like, 36 or no more than 40 days. And you knew that that was coming to an end at some stage or another. Then when you step in the first week of January, what is it, by the 6th or 7th of January, whatever date it was, and you start to think about, I'd not have thought in my head, it entered my head about a January transfer window or deadlines and things like this here. And not just that there, yes, expectation going up that you think, oh, well, listen, you'll just step in again and results will follow. It's just, yeah, absolutely. It's been far more difficult this time because it's a longer period, or you think you're in for a longer period. And I actually, when I was speaking to Dermot Desmond the second time, he said, I said I might not last that length of time. I said in terms of results. And you know what he said? I thought he would be accommodating. He said, I know. And so it's been like that. Honestly, it's been some really good moments, and yeah, it's been, yeah. Let me put it this way. I know you're the two of you are in really good form, but apparently you've been devastating, absolutely devastating.
Oh, the show's flying since you left, Martin.
I know, but there's no question that the very fact that the two of you, I think, I haven't heard a third voice. So is anybody with you today?
No.
Oh, so you've got rid of Martin. So you've got rid of Martin.
No, it's a Tuesday. We have unfortunately on Monday.
Yeah, we had him yesterday, Martin. We're still trying to go over that experience. Martin, before you leave us, a big one this weekend. You guys are second, fourth place Motherwell come to Celtic Park. That's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I went up to see them. Myself, Sean Maloney, and Mark Fotheringham last, because we were playing on the Sunday, and Motherwell were playing Dundee at Dundee on the Saturday.
Yeah.
So we went up to, because these are two. Motherwell this week, and then Dundee away the following week before the international break, and going up to see them. So absolutely, they are a really fine side playing some really lovely football, no question about it. This will be difficult for us. I'll find out what the situation is. We'll know tomorrow about our own particular injuries and things like this here. But regardless of what happens, regardless of who plays for us, it will be really difficult, seriously. And it's not just a matter of saying that, it just will be, because they're a fine footballing side.
I mean, it's a four-way title race, isn't it, really, with them involved?
It is.
Yeah.
And when would you have said that? Obviously, Hearts are in a great position at this minute. It's one that you would want with only 9 games left, the lead that they have. But when was the last time you thought 4 teams might contest the SPL?
Exactly. Martin, listen, if you want a quieter life, just come back.
Do you know what? There are moments in the evening time when I think I would just love to come back there, and then I think, nah, I can't stand Jordan anymore. So, all right,
Martin.
All right,
keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
You're a remarkable man, and keep doing what you're doing.
Jim, honestly, I am not. I am actually very, very unremarkable, believe it or not. I am. But listen, honestly, enjoy it, and well done, the two of you. Brilliant. Well done.
Martin O'Neill, thank you so much for being with us. Wow, soonest earlier, but the current Celtic boss, Martin O'Neill, with us live on this show. Stay with us.
Just like former players, on the TV pundits, radio pundits, They've been saying the same thing for weeks and months now.
Saying what?
That Arsenal is going to fail. Arsenal is winning ugly. Arsenal is a set pieces team.
Who are saying this?
Who's saying they're going to fail?
Yeah, Gary Neville, Roy Keane, Carragher, all of them. Even some former Arsenal players. I just crossed the path, with Ray Parlour. Just came out and say, "Are you confident to stay?" No, I'm not.
Well, I'm confident, but I don't want to overshoot it, if you know what I mean. I know Piers Morgan said they're going to win it in March and this, that, whatever. I don't want to be saying things like that because I know how hard it is, and you could get a bad spell. But they're in a great position, and sometimes you can be overconfident, can't you?
Ray, what about the Brighton game? Brighton fans were going crazy about the time wasting. Did you see that or not?
Look, you do try and slow if you can. Now, I mean, we used to try and do it. If we're leading and whatever, you got to try and see games out. And the good thing about that game was that they wasn't very good. They was poor as a team, but they won the game, and that's what it comes down to. You don't analyse every single game when you finish the season with the trophy in your hands and say, "Well, but remember the Brighton game? We didn't play that well, did we? We got lucky there." You just embrace the moment and say, "Look, we're champions of England," and that's the most important thing. So you can try any sort of tactics if you're going to slow it down, but I think it's a little bit unfair that they're saying about the set plays and this sort of set plays is part of the game.
Every Celtic fan in the land reacting to our chat with Martin and Neil. I want to thank Martin for joining us on the show. Before we get to 12 noon, Simon, just a few minutes away, I just want to get your reaction to what Alexander Usyk has told the world as to the identity of who will be his final three opponents.
Listen, Rico, this is first. Second, it's a who win.
Wardley or Dubois?
Wardley Dubois.
You can't see Dubois again
yeah,
now.
And third fight, it's my friend Greedy Belly Tyson Fury.
So he seemed to have some Ukrainian prompter there. So he's going to fight the kickboxer Rico Verhoeven. Then he'll take on the winner of Wardley Dubois.
Yep.
And then Tyson Fury again.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Agit Kabiel, you're probably disappointed because you're the WBC. And you'd like to fight Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. If you're Moses Atoma, you might be disappointed. If you're Alexander Usyk's bank manager, you probably think Tyson Fury is a good one, and rightly so. That ultimately, if he's fighting the winner of Wardley versus Dubois, he's fighting Dubois again for the third time. So he fights Dubois 3 times, he fights Usyk 3 times. Look, I think these are more legitimate fights. I mean, look, obviously, we daren't talk about Rico van Herven, otherwise he'll never come on one of our shows and his manager, Peter Fury, will start crying again. But the fact is that that's just an exhibition fight, isn't it?
Do you think he's ducking Moses?
Well, Moses is a long way from being ready for Alexander Usyk. I don't think Moses is ready for Alexander Usyk in the next 12 months. And neither should we want him to be. He's got a lot of experience to be gained. And standing him in against the master and hoping that time's caught up with him is probably an unfair thing to put Moses Atoma in. We want Moses Atoma to be a champion for a long time, so we want to make sure that he gets all the experiences and gets to the level of fighting the elite when he is experienced enough to do so. And that's why the jeopardy of Jermaine Franklin, if Moses goes in there, bang, knocks him out in 2 or 3 rounds, everyone's going to be screaming for it because everyone's going to say, look what he's done to everybody. He just keeps on demolishing you. You've got to step him in against the world-level fighter.
Yeah.
World-level fighter.
Is it a farewell to boxing that wets your whistle regarding Usyk? Verhoeven, the winner of Wardley Dubois, and Tyson again.
Well, yeah, to some extent, yeah. I mean, I think if it were Fabio Wardley winning the fight against Daniel Dubois, which unfortunately for Fabio, I've said he will, then I can see the more interest for me because we haven't seen Fabio fight Alexander Usyk before, whereas we've seen Daniel fight him twice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As far as Tyson Fury is concerned, well, as much as I like Tyson Fury as a fighter, we bring in this ugly little circus that comes in that I think doesn't do anyone any good. And I think he's had his chance, and we know. But then again, from a bank, will it sell out? The question, Frank will come on here and say, pack it all in, it'll sell out, and it will sell out.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, it's not a bad fight, Fury versus Usyk 3rd time round. Not a bad fight, but is there a real need for it? When we saw trilogies before, when we saw Riddick Bowe fighting Evander Holyfield, or other fights of that nature, there was a reason for it. There was a rubber to be determined. In this one, despite the delusions of Tyson Fury, he lost both those fights.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Simon. Finally, if these are his final 3 fights, in your mind's eye at the moment, does Usyk retire unbeaten?
On the balance of probabilities, I think it's difficult to say not. I think that the only thing you can tell with a fighter, and the fighters will tell you themselves far more coherently than I ever could, is that time catches up in a moment. And all of a sudden you go old overnight. So it depends. If he goes in against Rico Verhoeven and it becomes a difficult fight, it shouldn't, but if it did, then you'll see the Tyson Fury effect against Francis Ngannou and saw what that became. Yeah. If he goes in against Fabio Wardley or Daniel Dubois and that's a really difficult fight and he gets dropped for the first time, who knows? The third one against Fury might be one step too many.
Sure.
Depends what Fury don't live his life properly, does he? Depends what Fury goes in against him in a year's time. He doesn't, does he, though?
Okay. Okay. We are approaching 12 noon. Again, my thanks to Martin and Neil for joining us live on the show. And Martin, I think, come the end of this second interim spell at Celtic, will no doubt be featuring in this very studio.
Well, let's hope
not. Sometime in the months ahead.
I don't want some wittering little leprechaun next to me again.
It's 12 noon, and we're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Simon, there was controversy last week, if you remember. Sections of Elland Road booed as the game against Manchester City paused for Muslim players to break their Ramadan fast. The incident occurred 11 minutes into the game. An explainer flashed up on the big screen. Do you remember that? Play has been paused briefly to allow players to break their fast, but the boos continued alongside some chanting. Manchester City on that occasion named 3 players, Muslim players, Marmoush, Cherki and Ait Nouri, in their starting 11. And it goes back to the fact that in 2021, an agreement was introduced to allow Muslim players to break their fast during a Premier League match. But there was a lot of chat around that and as to why a certain number of Leeds fans ended up booing. Was it because of a pause in play because of the fasting? Well, ahead of another fasting break in yesterday's FA Cup match, Leeds this time were proactive online with a statement which seemed to outline why the booing may have happened, blaming themselves for poor communication. And Leeds said, Leeds are asking for respect to be shown during this Sunday's fifth round tie against Norwich. Play will be paused to allow players observing Ramadan to break their fast, including our own striker, Joel Pirro. And that seemed to work because they referred to the first game at Elland Road. It was paused. And then they said, now, while we displayed a message on our big screen at Elland Road to explain why the game had been paused, it wasn't visible for approximately 25% of the stadium, including the South Stand. In our preceding fixture with Manchester City at the Etihad in November 2025, the game was controversially stopped in the second half for a tactical timeout during an injury break.
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan Van Range. Commercial vehicles that go the distance for your business. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van Centre.
With your headlines at 12:02. I'm Nick Ellaby. Good afternoon. Joey Barton's been arrested following an alleged assault near a golf club in Liverpool. It's understood Barton was one of two men arrested outside Huyton and Prescott Golf Club on Sunday night. The victim was taken to hospital with injuries to his ribs and face. Now, after Keith Andrews came out in defence of Dango Ouattara's fluffed Panenka, saying he despises the culture of slamming players who miss penalties, an expert tells us we should be praising West Ham's Alphonse Areola instead.
Many goalkeepers don't stay central because it looks like they're not doing anything, but staying central is an active choice, and that's one that Areola took in this shootout to great success.
Ben Littleton, author of 12 Yards, The Art and Psychology of the Perfect Penalty, says Ouattara just missed the trick of a deceptive fast run-up. Ahead of Spurs' trip to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, live on talkSPORT tonight, former Tottenham defender Sebastian Bassong's told us an SOS to Harry Redknapp might be helpful in the short term.
The way he used to manage us, it was really man management. He used to put a lot of responsibility onto us, because he had these skills to pick up good players and good men in order to play amongst each other.
It's thought Igor Tudor wouldn't survive two more big defeats. And Celtic's interim manager Martin O'Neill has told White and Jordan he fears the worst for the old firm.
It's a shame because I think the things that I was hoping that would happen and happen for a long time may now not happen anymore. The full allocation, both at Ibrox and Celtic, may be been taken away.
Police Scotland have made 9 arrests so far after a violent pitch invasion at Ibrox on Sunday. Their investigation continues. More at talksport.com.
talkSPORT News.
Oil prices are going down after Trump said the war may nearly be over, and MPs reject a complete ban on social media for teenagers. More from the news team in half an hour.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. With over 600 centres across the UK, most of which open 7 days a week, we're always there when you need us. QuickFit. Drive away happy every time.
Cloudy for most of us, patchy rain in the west, getting windier later before some brighter spells this afternoon, and more rain arriving in the west this evening.
Good afternoon, everybody. 4 minutes past 12 noon. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We are live on talkSPORT. A lot to get through in our final hour. I just want to re-emphasise my thanks to Martin O'Neill for joining us live. Earlier, we were joined by former Rangers manager Graham Souness, former Liverpool captain as well, of course, who was looking ahead to tonight's Champions League game. The early kickoff, 5:45, Galatasaray, who Graham used to manage as well, up against his former club, Liverpool. Some big matches on the go tonight. Newcastle, Barcelona being one of them, and we will look at that before we go. But of course, a lot of the focus of attention is also on the upcoming World Cup in the summer in the USA. And before that, a whole bunch of World Cup playoff games are going to be played to finally to finally work out who's going to be in the finals come the summer. Iraq has made a formal request to have their World Cup playoff match postponed. It comes after they rejected a proposal from FIFA that the squad should make a 25-hour road journey to Turkey before flying to Mexico to fulfill the fixture. Iraq faces a World Cup playoff match against either Bolivia or Suriname in Monterrey on March the 31st. But all sorts of problems being faced by the Iraqis logistically. Around half of the Iraq squad are in Baghdad and they're unable to travel, while the head coach, Graham Arnold, is stuck in Dubai. Such are the problems coming from the problems thrown up by the ongoing conflict with Iran. Former Manchester United coach, now assistant manager for the Iraq national team, Rennie Mullenstein, joins us live. Rennie, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Jim. Good afternoon.
Good to speak to you. You're a man who's worn a few hats in his time since your time at Manchester United, and this is another. You're the assistant manager of the Iraq international squad. Of course, Graham Arnold, currently the man in charge. So what is the latest? I mean, what is the likelihood that you're going to be able to fulfil this playoff fixture?
Well, the situation is very uncertain, Jim. We obviously keep tabs every day if there's any developments. Graham will be speaking to members of the AFC and the FIFA on a regular basis. And as long as this uncertainty carries on, and you've already mentioned it in your intro, the biggest complication is that obviously the airspace around Iran and Iraq is shut. Therefore, the local players, we can't get out. And that was another, maybe a little bit of a miscalculation, of FIFA thinking that, all our players came from Iraq, but that's not the case. It's about a 50-50% split, 50% play in clubs abroad, some in other countries in the Middle East, but still quite a few in Europe as well. So, but the big problem is that the people that are in Iraq, that they are stuck at the moment.
Yeah, and are you and Graham in constant touch with those players who are indeed stuck in Iraq right now?
Yes, obviously. We need to know, obviously, we need to make sure that everybody obviously is safe and in these uncertain periods, because we talk about a football match, whereas this thing that's going on is by far bigger than anything else that we can comprehend. But yeah, it's not a good situation.
I mean, what was your reaction, Rennie, if I can ask you, when FIFA proposed that you and the squad make a 25-hour road journey to Turkey and then fly to Mexico?
Well, make that 35, Jim, and I know what the roads look like in Iraq. That is absolutely not done. Absolutely unacceptable. It just cannot be done. I think also, Jim, what people need to realise and understand, and I would love to get Simon's take on this. People do not understand that if we play the winner of Suriname-Bolivia, that will be our 21st World Cup qualifier. 21st. So I always say the World Cup is the highest platform that every athlete wants to perform at. And then the road towards that platform is completely different from Europe, where teams only have to play 6 to 8 World Cup qualifiers. And if they go in the playoff, maybe 10. It is something that is not easy, especially not for countries like Iraq, because they don't have a lot of money, and you know what it costs, to fly all over Asia to play those games.
It's incredible. Simon's right beside me, Rennie. As Rennie says, there's 20.
Why so many? Just out of curiosity, because I'm not following it, Rennie. Why so many games? What there's a necessity for so many games?
Well, to be fairly honest, Simon, I think it's just another money-making model for AFC. AFC could have easily looked at all the countries participating in the World Cup qualifiers, and then divided by, the sort of top countries and the countries that can play a preliminary round. But that has not been done. So we ended up obviously in the first round of qualifiers, then in 3 groups of 6, of which we ended up in the playoffs again, which was a head scratcher again, because normally playoffs you would think are played on neutral ground or in home and away setup. But we had to play in Saudi with Indonesia, which Saudi give the home advantage. They played Indonesia first. We played them 3 days later, and then we played Indonesia of Saudi at the end. So Saudi had 5 days to recover to play the second game, and it cost Indonesia definitely. And it cost us at the end because we didn't qualify because of one goal. But these are things that are going on, which you sometimes scratch your head, because at the end of the day, I think FIFA stands for fair play, and I think they need to create a level playing field.
Rennie, do you worry that if FIFA reject your request to replay this game on your terms, that you may be asked to forfeit the tie and it's goodbye to the World Cup finals?
Well, that would be an absolute, disaster. I wouldn't name it, because disaster is what's happening now in the Middle East in terms of the war, but it would be a huge, huge disappointment for all the people of Iraq that have been waiting 39 years. And it's a miracle already where we are at this moment, Jim, with the setup and the team and the things that we had to go through. So I think FIFA needs to do everything to make sure that that game is played, or like Graham says, maybe is postponed until 7 to 10 days before the World Cup.
Rennie, it's my understanding, curiously, that you might get there anyway, because Iraq is seen as the most likely candidate to replace Iran should they, as maybe expected, have to withdraw from playing in the World Cup finals themselves. They're already there. But of course, there's huge doubt as to whether or not they'll get there.
Yes, that could happen. And then through the AFC, we are the highest ranked team, so we would then take Iran's place. And then UAE might step in to replace us to play the winner of Suriname against Bolivia. But there's also rumours that if the FIFA makes that final decision, they might push the highest ranked FIFA team to go to replace Iran, which is Italy. So you can think, who would they rather have at the World Cup?
Absolutely. So they turn to Europe. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
You have to sympathise with Rennie and the Iraqi players, Simon. After 21 matches in this campaign, they've got themselves to a playoff, and now they're being asked to do a bunch of things, not least a 25-hour road trip.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, what's the fullback position? Okay, I mean, ultimately, what you're saying is to push the game back as far as you possibly can to make sure that the stability in the region becomes more prevalent and people can travel easier. Are you saying that your suggestion, your perspective is, or the perspective of your FA is that go as far away from the circumstances as now, even to be within 7 days of the tournament starting? Is that what your fallback position is?
Yes, that would be it, because it's very clear, Simon, that the airspace will be shut until the 1st of April. And our game is on the 31st of March. That's why Graham wants to buy time to making sure that we got April and May, and basically saying, listen, we then have got a little bit more time if we can get the players out to prepare. And if we do make it, we can stay there and participate in the World Cup. But I think the whole thing, Jim, throws so many other aspects of that needs to be looked at. Safety and security is one. And like I said, that those are all things that we cannot take lightly.
Absolutely. It must be hard, Rennie, keeping the Iraqi players' minds on football.
Well, absolutely, because obviously we do speak, and they are so desperate to go to the World Cup. But you never know how this incident or this war is going to escalate and how much Iraq is going to be drawn into it. And obviously the players will have to look after the families as well.
Rennie, it's always good to speak to you, and it's always good to speak to you wherever you find yourself working in the game, and you've had a few interesting engagements. I can't speak to you without throwing one to you about Manchester United. Michael Carrick has done so well in his time there, no doubt. You're asked this by any United fan who comes up and recognises you, you're instantly recognisable wearing your former Manchester United hat. What do you think is the likelihood that Michael gets it?
Well, it will be up for discussion, obviously, if the results keep coming. But you had the first spanner in the works against Newcastle, which I think he should, and probably he classed it as a disappointment, because if you go to 10 men with so many minutes to play and then lose the game at the end. And I did think it was not a surprise to what happened when he took over, because I said it even on another show of talkSPORT, it doesn't take much to fix it. And Michael fixed a lot. You could see that in the early games. He got the responses, he got the performances, he placed players in the right positions. They've got a lot of threat going forward, and they have got no midweek games. So that result against Newcastle and the performance was a disappointment for me, but a surprise as well, because you have all the time now to nail those principles down. Now, what is the likelihood for Michael to get it? he has to keep winning games. He just needs to keep winning games, but also he needs to, keep improving those performances that people start to recognise. This looks more like a Manchester United team of old. That's what he needs to try to achieve.
Rennie, I want to thank you very much indeed for speaking. It amazes me. Thank you, Rennie, for joining us live in the show. It amazes me that Rennie, with all his experience and such a successful time at Manchester United, is not in the conversation to go back as first team coach.
Well, he's living a very varied life, isn't he? I mean, the interesting thing for the Iraq team is that they haven't ever qualified for a World Cup. They played in the '86 World Cup. So the fact they're in these new structures that are enabling them to potentially qualify is a positive. They've got to play 21 competitive games. Some would say, if you're an international manager, the more competitive games you play, the better your side's going to get. So I understand the amount of games they're about to play. The interesting thing will be for FIFA is how they have made a big play about increasing the World Cup to 48 teams to make sure that other regions are given opportunities to play and develop world football. Wenger talks about it in various things about how important it is. Yeah. So they really have got to work very hard to find a way to deny Iraq playing in this game, given the circumstances and geopolitics, and then shoehorning on the European side in like Italy. I understand why they might want to do it because of the commercial opportunity that Italy may present if it were Italy that were put into that position, as Rennie was alluding to. But really and truly, you'd have to hold FIFA's feet to the fire and say, well, hang on a second, there's no harm in delaying this game until the draw will be made. The team will be put. It'll either be Bolivia, Suriname, or Iraq that are going to play in this particular space in the World Cup. Why can't we leave it until the very last minute for the final team to be determined? Yeah. It can't be that big a deal. I mean, it can be achieved. So it would be, I think, poor on FIFA's part to suggest that they cannot delay this given the circumstances and give them, enough runway, for want of a better expression, to be able to play this game and subsequently have a team playing from that region. Yeah. That hasn't played there before, only went there in '86 from a default position, didn't qualify, never won a game in the World Cup, never been there since. You either want to develop world football or you don't. True. I mean, it's not FIFA. It's not FIFA's fault though that certain countries' airspace is shut down. No, but it's FIFA's. No, but hold on, that's not the point. FIFA's gift is, what do you need to have them? If you've got the tournament kicking off in June, and you've got playoffs now, and there's no harm. Ultimately, it's going to be one of these sides. You've drawn out who they're going to play against in the group stages, and so on and so forth. What is the factor that would stop you from giving them some ability to be able to play the game? Sure. Okay, we will find out how it works out for Graham Arnold and Rennie Mullenstein and Iraq in the fullness of time. Coming up to 12:20 this Tuesday lunchtime.
It's not just an embarrassment for the old firm, it's an embarrassment for the whole of Scottish football. And Scottish football as a whole is getting tarnished with this. And I just think it's incredibly unfair on the normal, well-behaved football supporter that they're getting tarnished with this brush. And I was listening to David Tanner. It's not just that yesterday, this has been going on for a long, long time. And Rangers as a football club need to address their own house. They need to put a stop to this. I know the way of stopping it is by banning them. Get them gone for the stadium. Nobody wants them.
Yeah, it's with the mask on as well, isn't it? All the covering their faces up as well, Gregor.
How's that anything to do with football? I go to a football match. I like to wear my colours. These people are not football supporters. They're mindless thugs. They're mindless thugs.
Yeah.
Gregor, I've always said, look, I'm a Glasgow boy. I've always said that, the history and all that. There's nothing, for me, there's nothing wrong with being excited before the game, singing your songs for 90 minutes, and then going home and being normal again. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to run on pitches, throw a few punches, and that's just beyond a joke. It's a disgrace.
That's the way it used to happen. Rangers, for many years, Rangers, there was trouble. Of course there was. It's part of the terrorism, but not like this. And this, as I said, it's a minority of people that's causing this.
It's Jim White and Simon Jordan live in talkSPORT. We're talking to Rennie Mullenstein there about the chances of Iraq making it to the World Cup finals through the playoff system, all the problems that they face getting this playoff played because of the ongoing situation with Iran. And of course, no ongoing situation with Iran regards the Welsh. Craig Bellamy and the Welsh, of course, still trying to get there. It seems a long time since Ryan Giggs was spoken about in conversation with Wales, Simon. He resigned from the role in 2022 following allegations made against him. In November 2020, Ryan, of course, was involved in all sorts of media stories. Jurors initially failed to reach majority verdicts on charges that he had assaulted his former girlfriend, Kate Greville, and her sister, Emma. But ahead of a retrial, Miss Greville withdrew her evidence. His KC, who represented him, told Manchester Crown Court, the position is that he's always been innocent of these charges and there have been very many lies told about him. In 2023, the same Ryan Giggs was found not guilty of coercive and controlling behaviour after his ex-girlfriend declined to give evidence in a retrial, and Giggs had always denied the charges. So life goes on as normal for Ryan Giggs. And over the weekend, Ryan fronted a video promoting International Women's Day for an Asian betting firm. In the clip, Ryan Giggs said, "Today we celebrate the strength, beauty and achievements of women everywhere. To all the amazing women in our community, keep shining and inspiring us all." So, as I say, he resigned from the Welsh job in 2022. And of course, we know what he did as a player. He had a glittering career as a player. How long do you think it might be that Ryan remains seemingly blacklisted from football?
I don't know whether he's blacklisted football or whether he's taken himself out of commission because of the adverse publicity around his circumstances. His private life has found its way into the newspapers for a variety of reasons, all manner of things, from things that he was alleged to have done and then not being found guilty of that makes him innocent by association, to things in his private life involving his brother and God knows what else.
Yeah.
But these are private matters. Does that mean that he is subsequently no longer capable of managing a football team? I don't know how good a manager Ryan Giggs is, so I can't speak about whether he would make a good manager now, given the fact he's been out of the game for 4 years. Things have moved on.
Well, he was Wales manager in January 2018. He led them to qualification for Euro 2020.
Yep.
At the end of the day, he has one hell of a lot of football know-how.
Sure, certainly as a player, and given the fact that he's done okay with Wales. If we're talking about another international job, he's burnt his bridges with the Welsh FA, I suspect. That's a circumstance, whether right or wrong, that ship has probably sailed, and Craig Bellamy's doing a decent job, however long Craig stays there for, and maybe passes Janu awaits him. I mean, I met Ryan Giggs years ago, didn't particularly warm to him, but that's not a benchmark for necessarily determining whether he should be a football manager or not. Clearly, he had a glittering career as a player. Clearly, he's put himself in the way of adverse publicity, one way or t'other. And that comes at a price. And the price now of modern day football is that managing an elite football club, you have to present as being the perfect human being in all aspects. If you've got any skeletons in your cupboard, allegation or proven, there's a challenge for you, because the optics of how football clubs want to present themselves around the world will be challenged by someone that has had their reputation besmirched. Some of it legitimately, these two instances not legitimately, in terms of the fact that the cases have never proceeded and he's never been found guilty of anything.
That's right.
The question for Ryan is...
So should he be unemployable in perpetuity?
Well, I don't know. Again, I don't know how many jobs he's applied for. I don't know whether he's unemployable in perpetuity. I don't know what level he thinks he can manage at. I don't know, there would be nothing stopping him from redeeming his... or finding himself. It's an interesting choice of redemption for marketing that he's alighted himself upon a campaign celebrating women. He would say, well, why wouldn't I? I've been found guilty of nothing. I've done nothing wrong. These were spurious allegations. Other people would say, an interesting choice for you to get yourself associated with it, because it's going to create currency, which is maybe the purpose of it in the first place. Notably, he's had to go and do that overseas, so he can manage overseas, I suspect. If he can be given commercial endorsements to represent a brand of some shape or form, then I'm assuming, in the same way that Mason Greenwood couldn't play in this country as a footballer because of the allegations were made about him, he's gone over to France and is making his career over there.
Yeah, with Marseille.
So
you have to separate what's going on in somebody's private life when you're thinking of maybe appointing them to some position in their professional life.
It depends upon the circumstances, doesn't it? It depends upon what they've been accused of in their private life and where it's gotten to. If they've been found guilty of something in their private life and you feel that that's a compromising of your position, then you have to take it into consideration. I try not to, because those without sin always, should cast the first stone, and that means there'll be very few stones thrown in this world.
Yes.
So again, it comes down to, what does Ryan Giggs want to do? I mean, I note things like he hasn't been inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame, which can only be because there's no doubt about it, Ryan Giggs was one of the top players in the Premier League during a very defining era of the Premier League.
Yeah, most decorated of all time.
There you are then. So by definition, on a footballing scenario, he should be included in it. For the reasons of political correctness, he's not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that in and of itself, what does football want to be? Does it want to be the judge of people's moral character? What do these things represent? I suppose they'll be able to turn around and say it represents not just excellence on the field, but I thought that's what it was about. You can't be in the Hall of Fame because you're a virtuous character, can you? You have to be in the Hall of Fame because you're a brilliant footballer. So you have to get it right and get the balance right. People want to hijack it. Well, actually, no, Simon. He's a dreadful person. He did these dreadful things, even when there were just allegations. And so as a result of it, he should be castigated forever. I'm not in that camp.
No, of course.
I'm not in that camp. So if he wants to manage and he wants to put himself above the parapet and find himself an opportunity to talk to people and be judged by the if we can accept people back into society. I mean, people run around revering and applauding and admiring and eulogising Mike Tyson, who was a convicted rapist.
That's right.
Who is a convicted rapist.
Yeah.
So with due respect to Ryan Giggs, with allegations against him that have never seen the light of day in terms of being tried in front of his peers, then he should have a free slate to some extent to manage a football team if he's good enough.
Okay. As we approach the final half hour of the show today, we're going to focus on the Champions League. Atletico Madrid up against Spurs, as we've mentioned. Galatasaray, Liverpool, you heard from Graham Souness. And Newcastle United, Barcelona. What can Newcastle do in that one? We'll look at that very shortly.
when I saw the scenes, whether the scale of the scenes were back to the 80s or not, which is my argument that they clearly weren't, there was not a surprise in my mind that there was an issue when you've got the two sets of fans in a combustible environment and large amounts of the opposing side being in the away ground for the first time in significant years. I look at the rules and say, it's interesting about rules being quoted as the SFA enforcing a 20% rule around the stadium capacity, yet the rules in the SPFL require you to provide a certain amount of away fans for the SPFL games, and Rangers and Celtic seem to have ignored that for years. So I don't really understand why they couldn't have ignored it for this game and turned around and said, in the interests of what we think is common sense, right now we don't think it's appropriate to stick 7,500 fans in a football stadium from the opposition right now because we think it's going to lead to problems. Then you look beyond that and go, well, you could have ignored the rules if you wanted to, and that may be me being a little bit cheap on the observation, but notwithstanding it, it's still there. You then look at it and go, if you don't think this was surprising, you think it's disappointing. I bet if I ask Bill Leckie, put aside your disappointment and your unhappiness, are you inherently surprised? Well, probably not. So what was done to prevent it? What was done to ensure that prevention, whether prevention should have to be part and parcel of a bloody football match, is a different argument entirely. What we're dealing with now is another set of circumstances surrounding two football clubs that should be at the pinnacle of Scottish football for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. And you can't strip them out of the cup, because you strip them out of the cup, all of a sudden the commercial revenues of the cup come into play.
Exactly.
We've seen this situation. So what did you do, honestly, when you look down and distill it down to prevent this?
Keith Andrews despises the culture of slamming players who miss penalties.
I think the ones I'm talking about, national heroes that have done it, ridiculed, persecuted. I think it's disgusting. It takes serious courage to do that. He practices that technique a lot. Goes in, everyone's raving about him.
The Brentford head coach says Dango Ouattara is fine after chipping the ball straight into Areola's hands. That allowed West Ham to make the FA Cup quarter-finals.
If I'm his teammate, I'm saying, what are you doing?
All the other pens were good. Some of West Ham's pens, top corner.
West Ham play Leeds in the last 8. Nuno Espirito Santos told us their cup run will help the squad as they push for Premier League survival. Meanwhile, former Spurs defender Sebastian Bassong's told us Harry Redknapp could be a very helpful addition for them in the short term.
The way he used to manage us, it was really man management. He used to put a lot of responsibility onto us because he had these skills to pick up good players and good men in order to play amongst each other.
Spurs go to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League live on talkSPORT tonight. Liverpool's trip to Galatasaray's Rams Park is the early kick-off on talkSPORT 2. Now, Australia have offered asylum to the rest of Iran's women's football team after 5 players claimed asylum. There are fears for their safety if they return home. The squad were called wartime traitors in Iran for not singing the national anthem before a game. And this year's boat race will be live with our colleagues over on Times Radio. They've secured a 3-year deal to cover Oxford versus Cambridge, one of the oldest events in sport. It's live on Easter Saturday. Just download the talkSPORT app to swipe between stations.
Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
Just gone 12:30. Simon's alongside me. Let's pick out who may well be the real deal this very week with Selco Builders Warehouse. And you have to think, Simon, if Newcastle United can find a way of beating Barcelona tonight, Lamine Yamal and all, you could argue Newcastle United would be very much spoken about in terms of being the real deal. This fellow was the real deal when he played for Newcastle United way back in 1997 on the night that the same Newcastle United beat Barcelona by 3-2. I'm talking about John Berisford, who joins us live in the show. John Beresford, good afternoon to you, mate.
Yeah, how are you, mate? Do you know what's weird? You talk about moments in time. I was at a dinner last night. I was with Les Ferdinand, and can you believe it? Charlie Woods, who was assistant to Bobby Robson, we were just reminiscing, and yes, we're talking rubbish and all that type of thing. We're all having a proper reminisce, and somebody came up to me and went, "Oh, in the modern day game, it's all about stats and all this and that." And I just went, "I've got to say, I'm not really I'm into all that. I'm a bit of a dinosaur for that." And then I got told, somebody went to me, he went, "Hey, by the way, Bez, I can tell you, your goal ratio in Champions League is better than Ronaldo and Messi's." And I went, "I'm into stats, love stats. Absolutely, I'm having stats all day long."
I love it. John, what do you remember of that night? I mean, you played in a team that had Faustino Asprilla. You had John Dal Thomason. Fantastic side. David Batty. Shea Given in goal. They had people like Rivaldo. They had Luis Enrique, now of PSG, of course, playing for them that night. Everywhere you looked around that pitch, it was star-studded.
It was, and don't get me wrong. I think that the beauty of it was we were new to it. You kind of like the excitement, the everything that was sort of like got brought to that night. It was just unbelievable. It's hard to explain sometimes. Just the noise, the anticipation of what everybody wanted. Yes, I remember myself. I'm playing against Luis Figo. At that time, probably the greatest player he was on the planet. But I think what they didn't expect is what St James's Park can sometimes give you. It gives you an extra yard. It gives you an extra sort of like energy that takes you to another place. And if it clicks and everybody sort of buys into it, it can be your night. It can take you to the next step. It's frightening that, and I know this sounds stupid, but you think, well, why don't you do that every game? Everybody, it's easy to say that, but when the emotion sort of runs and everybody buys into it, it's an unbelievable place to be at. Newcastle on under the lights.
Yeah,
and we just hoping that tonight's going to be the night.
I mean, Simon, I think John's absolutely right. Way back then, 1997, it was a magical night for them, and the fans played their part.
Indeed.
And I know you go at me because I go on ad nauseum. Johnny can't stand it when I talk in such favourable terms about the Newcastle United fans. But tonight is another occasion for this. Look at me when I'm talking to you, please, Simon. They can play a part tonight, can't they?
Yeah, of course.
A big part.
But the fact of the matter is that on the balance of probabilities, it's a very difficult game. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you catch Barcelona at the right time, Newcastle are not a bad side in any shape or form. They're a very good side. But we saw levels. We saw levels for Newcastle against Man City. It might be Eddie's selection in that game was a curious one with the midfield at certain times. But notwithstanding that, you saw Barcelona at Man City's level. The challenge for Newcastle has to always been, can they bridge the gap economically to get to the level where they can compete with the Barcelonas and the Man Cities, not on an ad hominem basis, or an individual basis, on a regular basis. So whilst it's a spectacular occasion, and what's great is that Newcastle have gotten through the group stages, qualified, where 2 or 3 years ago, when they were so unfortunate, they got a result against PSG, they got robbed in Paris, in my view, in terms of a penalty awarded against them, and they should have been perhaps coming out of the group stages. Aston Villa got a lot of credit last year for coming out of the group stages. Newcastle have done the same thing. They've got a plum draw against Barcelona, so it's great on paper.
Yeah.
I'm sure Eddie would have liked to perhaps a slightly easier draw, because on the balance of probability, albeit in recent weeks we've seen Barcelona get smashed 4-0 at home, away to Atletico Madrid. We've seen them get beat by Girona. Conversely, they've come back and won games after that, and they're doing very well in their own league. So I hope that it's a good game. I know it'll be a good game, but I hope it's a good game for Newcastle.
I agree with you totally. John, what about what Eddie's saying in the build-up to this game? It's one of those matches. It's a moment all its own, and we've got to grab the moment. Here's Eddie.
But there's only 16 teams left, and we're one of them. So I think it's very much an opportunity to grab a moment that we may never get again. You don't know what life brings tomorrow, yet alone future seasons. We don't want to waste that opportunity. Don't want to kick ourselves and think what ifs. So I think this is a moment for us to try and grab. Since my time here, just over 4 years, we've worked to get to this point. So as long as we perform to our maximum, we'll have to accept the result. But we want to try and get as close as we can to our very best.
John, what I would say here is probably like yourself, I'm a big fan of Eddie Howe's, but 12th in the Premier League and out of both domestic cups. Will a strong European run satisfy a season of domestic indifference, if you like, for Eddie?
Yeah, I hope so. You know, don't get me wrong. What Eddie's done has been absolutely magnificent. But then you become a victim of his own success. You're now, because you're in the Champions League, now you're competing in the FA Cup. Simon's absolutely, he's spot on, by the way, though, because we got schooled by Manchester City, literally a few days ago. But then we battered Man United the previous game before it. Sometimes you sometimes get a bit confused which Newcastle United team's going to turn up, and that's but for Eddie's situation, yeah, I think our owners, that if they want to see that there's a progression. And progression is that you're competing with the big boys, which is now Barcelona. If you can write your name if you actually get an unbelievable result against us. Everyone, and I was out in the town last night with Newcastle. The fans actually understand. They're not honestly, seriously, we're not expecting to beat Barcelona over 2 games. But all they want, if you get it right, and you have the certain players at a certain time all connect, like Keith Gillespie, I'm going back 30 years ago, absolutely destroyed Sergei. Tino Asprilla, who I've been told is supposed to be flying in today, by the way, but I'll believe it when I see Tino here. But if you get the right people at the right time, who knows what can happen? And it's like I say, you just think hopefully it's going to be the perfect storm tonight.
It could well be. John, before you leave us, what do you put, and I don't want to end on a pessimistic note, what do you put down the inconsistency of the team down to? Where'd you lay that? Why have they been inconsistent?
I do every home game and I go to a few away games. I don't know. The frustration is that, we've got a decent squad. Don't get me wrong, we're not in the the top 4 in this league. We understand now where we are. I get a little bit frustrated that that I think it's when you're changing teams and you're trying to sort of use your squad. I think we haven't got a great squad. We've got a good squad, and I think that's the frustration of it. But I just think when I think about Newcastle and where they're going, we're in a good place, But the trouble is, it's like whether it be Sky, whether it be TNT, whether it be Amazon, whether it be talkSPORT. The problem is now is when we're competing with so many teams, and you just think to yourself, well, we're only, we're not there yet, but we know that I think everybody gets frustrated. Well, we're getting backed by our owners. I think that our owners are playing it clever. The problem is the fans want it now. Our owners, I think, are looking for 3, 4, 5 years ahead, and that's the frustration of it. The biggest, and I've got to jump on this because my biggest frustration is that we signed Voldemort, we signed Visser. The biggest problem when you play at Newcastle United, you need a centre forward. Everyone needs a centre forward, but it's crying out. I was sat with Les Ferdinand last night, and he is the most modest guy and everything else. I was looking up, playing with Andy Cole, Les, Shearer. When you're a centre forward at Newcastle United, that's the biggest miss we're missing at the moment in time. Yeah. And I think, and that's why I'm saying, give Eddie the time that don't win. We're not going to go and win the Champions League, but I promise you, next season, give us the money, give Eddie the money, and hey, we'll be all right, and then we'll be They're moving on.
Sounds good. Sounds good. They need a John Beresford. That's what they need. John, well done, mate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, boys. Look after yourself. All the best.
What a good lad John Beresford is. Newcastle United, the real deal. Well, in our eyes, they are. The real deal with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's real deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com.
Wrexham boss Phil Parkinson said he was proud of his team's performance.
Yeah, listen, we've got to be immensely pleased with the performance tonight. In so many aspects of the display were good. The way we pressed, the structure, because it's not just about pressing, it's when to press, it's the communication. But some of the football we played as well, I thought was really good. And I stressed in the press conference and to the lads yesterday, we weren't coming into this game just to stop Chelsea. We were coming into it to play ourselves. And we've gone toe-to-toe. We really have. I felt second half we were going to win the game. I could feel it. I really was very confident on the touchline. And moments have gone against us tonight. And it's our first taste of VAR here at the racecourse. And, it takes a bit of getting used to, because those decisions will be, certainly the send-off, I think, will be a big talking point.
Yeah, I think Phil's called it perfectly there. He's talked about the decisions and what had happened during the game, big moments. And, yeah, look, they 1-0 up, pegged back 1-1. Go 2-1 up, get pegged back 2-2. And I've got to say, the second goal, which is so often the lad Doyle who scored, it was a deflection from a shot. And them goals are quite clever goals, because if you just divert the ball as it's coming to you, that it beats any goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper's going one way. And if you get a slight deflection on it, it gets diverted into the bottom corner. And I thought they just absolutely matched Chelsea in every way, shape and form. And to be fair, they must, be proud of what they've done this year in the Championship and in the Cup.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Sign up now at dazn.com/boxing.
Now, some big fights coming up over the next few weeks live in DAZN, including this weekend live from Dublin. Jazza Dickens defends his WBA World Super Featherweight title against Anthony Kakachi. In a St. Patrick's Day weekend showdown, of course. Then on March the 21st, George Liddard takes on Tyler Denny for the British and Commonwealth titles. March the 28th, the spotlight shifts to the future heavyweight champion of the world, Moses Itoma, taking on Jermaine Franklin. Franklin previously went 12 rounds with AJ and has never been knocked out. Watch these fights only on DAZN. Jermaine Franklin was in this very studio, Simon. I think it's fair to say we both liked him. Does this end that never been knocked out boast?
Well, you asked that in front of him, didn't you? You asked me.
I'm asking you.
You asked me that in front of him.
Did I?
Yes. As I was going out the door, you said, "Oh, before you go, while we have this moment to share,
right?
How do you think Jermaine will get on in this fight?" Knowing full well that I'd said I thought we'd get knocked out.
Okay.
So me being me, felt the necessity to say, "You're going to get knocked out."
No, sorry, this is a first. You produced a little notebook.
No, it's something else. This is
out your bag with, and I recognise your own handwriting. I've never seen this kind of thing before. What's going on here?
Talk boxing.
Oh, you're doing top boxing after that.
Yes.
And then he says, "Oh, that's your list for Tesco." Okay, no problem.
It's a list for you. Incontinence pants.
Thank you very much.
Imodium.
I'm wearing them. Later on tonight, we spoke to John Berisford about Newcastle United taking on Barcelona. But of course, Tottenham Hotspur have the somewhat unenviable task of going in their own patch against Atletico Madrid tonight. Simeone's own patch over there, and it's live on talkSPORT. It's the business end of the Champions League this evening, the last 16 of the Champions League. But the fact of the matter is, they seem to do well in Europe, but dismally badly in the domestic league here in the Premier League. Is that going to change after tonight? Let's hear from, Igor Tudor going into this.
Playing as a team who has a story in this Champions League, so they have experience, they have quality. We need to do our best in terms that we need to grow. You know, as you said, also because our first aim is Premier League, and this need to be said also publicly. It's a normal thing. This is something extra, but that don't mean that we don't want to pass, and we don't want to go in next round.
You wonder, Simon, the players aren't silly. They read newspapers, they see what's going on social media, and they know what speculation is like in terms of news coming out of their club. It's understood that Spurs are planning a summer overhaul of the squad. The captain, Christian Romero, likely to depart from the football club. He's available to play tonight, incidentally, following his 4-match suspension in the Premier League. But it's thought the club believes a parting of the ways at the end of the season may be the best for all parties. What I'm trying to ask you is, how committed to the cause do you think these players are at the moment under this man Tudor?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? I mean, ultimately, we've seen them respond to his remonstrations by getting beat by Fulham and Palace. And he's went hard on them, didn't he? He talked about the obligations upon them and what they weren't doing and how he felt that. And everyone went, ooh, maybe that's bold and maybe that's what needed to be said, but it needed to be said to them, not the media. So he went for that, and then he's got nothing from them against Palace, besides the fact he's suggested that the second half performance showed him something. He had to say that. He had to say something like that because he had nowhere else to go. He could have doubled down and really gone after them again, and what would they have achieved? This has the hallmarks of a game that could start something for Tottenham or could really cement something for them. If they go over there and get pumped because they can't cope with the atmosphere, they can't cope with the team that they're playing against, and they come back on the back end of a really bad beating, that's going to hurt them. This idea that the Champions League has been a saving grace for them, it could actually be the final nail in the coffin for them if they go and get smashed to pieces by Atletico Madrid, which I sincerely hope they don't. And they come back with even more. I mean, their morale, their chins have to be on the floor because they're getting beat without their boots on and their boots on at times because they're just simply not good enough. And their performances against Palace will, people will say the situation with the centre half being sent off created the circumstances. They weren't great before then either. They got beat away by Fulham. No shame in that, but these are games they needed to get something out. They needed to lay a glove on the opposition.
And interestingly, they're back at the Metropolitano tonight for the first time since losing, you remember, at the 2019 Champions League final to Liverpool. Is it a stark reminder of how far they've fallen?
I guess so. I mean, that was a terrible game in that final, wasn't it? They didn't turn up in that either, did they? And of course, people will use that as an opportunity to say, well, look what's happened. Look how far they've gone. Look whose fault that was. That's this person's fault, that person's fault.
But it was a Champions League final.
It was.
And now they're scrapping to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, and they've got a Champions League game there. So it's ironic, isn't it? They're still in the Champions League playing whilst, trying to keep them in the Premier League. And this is a fruit of a poison tree that a few people have got their hands all over, Ange Postecoglou included. They're all in this particular mix. But this group of players now have got to get themselves together because they don't just get to exit stage left without any consequences for themselves.
Yeah.
And so the manager has to get something out of them, and he needs to get something out of them tonight. They need to put on a really good performance, build a performance. Somehow West Ham, after losing to Nottingham Forest, went away and beat QPR in the FA Cup, and that started some momentum. Then they went on and won the next game against Spurs, and then West Ham have got some momentum. Spurs have got to find some inspiration from somewhere. Their inspiration might be that the other teams around them don't get the results that they need, but that can't be your answer. So tonight has to be a lightning rod for Spurs. It has to be a really good performance, even if it's a performance that results in a loss. If they really show something in terms of, fortitude, and some, because he was big criticism about them was they had no intent when they're going forward against Fulham. He talked about the fact that we have no knowledge of how to score goals. Seemingly, I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
But all of it, they've got to show a rounded performance. I suspect in this instance, it's got to be a performance based upon resolution and being resolute and resilient.
Okay.
Because then they can build on that, and then their next game is whoever they've got when they come back in the Premier League. Is it Chelsea?
They got Liverpool.
Liverpool.
Yeah. And talking about Liverpool, good luck to them tonight over in Turkey against Galatasaray. Atletico Madrid, Spurs, Igor Tudor, hoping they can do something. And John Beresford, we heard from him. Thanks to you, Bez, for joining us live. Newcastle United against Barcelona tonight. Of course, you won't miss a trick on talkSPORT. You won't miss a trick from Cheltenham tomorrow when I'm on air with Alex Crook from 10 to 1, as Simon is back here somewhere in this area playing paddle tennis in a very bad pair of ill-fitting shorts. It's 1 o'clock.
Has the hiring of Edu destabilised the best season in a generation at Nottingham Forest? And how much responsibility does Evangelos Marinakis have to take for it? We understand that he's been told to stay away from the City ground, pending a termination of his contract at the end of the season. I know that Forest fans will be reluctant to criticise Marinakis, but is this a mess of his own making? Because he had a manager who was very successful, almost